Chapter 193. Millions of Ghosts. A person sighed. His voice was shrill and his tone sounded helpless and slightly mocking. Now that we have spent so much effort on him, it will be hard to replace him. It was still raining and the streets were still filled with people. They all looked up at the clouds in the sky. But at this time there was no sign of Li Yunxin and Yunzi fighting. Dark clouds were dark clouds, there was nothing special about them. But the Dragon King was still in the cloud and so was a Xian realm cultivator, but no one knew about it. And at the end of the old city street in the city of Wei, on the roof of the calligraphy and brush shop that originally belonged to Wang Xing, the son-in-law of the Yu clan, stood two people. One black and one white, both with their tongues out. It was Black by Yanjun. When Li Yunxin first met the two lords, the white hell lords had the words, "Where did the man-eating demon come from?" written on it, while the black hell lords had the words, "Where are you going after reincarnation?" written on it. But now, Bai Yanjun's had the words, "Empty," and the black Yama lords had the words, "Empty." Bai Yanjun looked at the crowd in the heavy rain while the black Yama lord looked at the sky and the abandoned palace beside them. He did not speak. Bai Yanjun then said, "Tsk. If you didn't promise Emperor Yi back then, such a thing wouldn't have happened today. Millions of ghosts, millions of ghosts. Hand them all to that kid. Let him set up a formation, and they will all be gone." The black Yama lord still did not speak. After looking at the eerie abandoned palace for a while, he said, "You were the one who received the benefits back then. That kid is here." After saying that, without bending his knees, he jumped down from the roof and disappeared in mid-air. Hearing this, Bai Yanjun turned and saw Li Yunxin's figure vanishing. He was standing under the roof in the rain and looking up at him. When the black Yama lord disappeared, he smiled and greeted, "Are you here to check the results?" Bai Yanjun looked at the thick clouds above his head in astonishment. "You're not dealing with Kun Wuxia anymore? Thank you so much for your help. Now he's been fooled by me and he's angry and he wants to go, but he doesn't want to go. He's in a fierce mental struggle." Li Yunxin smiled and bowed to Bai Yanjun. "If he comes to talk to me later, I'll still have to borrow his power." She knew that Li Yunxin would only be so polite and courteous when he was asking for someone's help, and it was very likely that he would turn his back on them. But Bai Yanjun still seemed to enjoy his compliments. He stroked his long tongue and laughed sinisterly. If I were you, I would quickly send him away. Why do I have to drag him and not allow him to leave? He's a profound realm Taoist master. Once he gets the wrong idea, he'll be able to send you away in the blink of an eye. This is a rare opportunity." Li Yunxin floated up to the roof and followed Bai Yanjun's gaze to look at the people on the street in the heavy rain. Those people raised their heads to look at the clouds, but they didn't know that the person they were looking at was right beside them, looking at them. Think about it, Yunzi is a rare figure in the city of Wei, not to mention a profound realm Taoist master, and a profound realm at that. Now that he's here and can talk to me for so long, I have to take this opportunity to open up the conversation. If I can, I'll make good use of it. Right now, I've killed both demons and cultivators, offending people on both sides. Kun Wuxia thinks that I'm not an ordinary person, so he shows a little respect and curiosity to me, but it's not enough. I have to make him stand on my side, at least make people think that he's on my side. This is indeed a risk, but if I don't take the risk now, it'll be more dangerous in the future. It's a mess and I have to sort it out. The White Hell Lord chuckled. "I like this kind of enthusiasm. And, if one day I see you fail to harm others and get harmed instead. That'll be more interesting." Li Yunxin also laughed with him. After laughing, he said, "I want to know about Emperor Yi." Bai Yanjun's face instantly showed a strange expression. "Why are you curious about this? In case your investment goes down the drain." Li Yunxin still had a smile on his face, but his tone was serious. "I don't know what 1,000,000 souls mean to you. But you guys work hard to capture souls every day, and even arrange for judges and ghost messengers. It's a tough job. Then I guess you'll feel heartache when you lose 1,000,000 souls. So I want to know what's the relationship between Emperor Yi and you, for you to spend so much money on him." Bai Yanjun didn't speak. Li Yunxin sat on the roof. Moss grew in the cracks of the roof tiles. After being soaked by the rain, it looked even greener and glossier. The heavy rain poured on the roof and flowed down the tiles, almost forming a small waterfall at the eaves. A few people were temporarily sheltering from the rain under the eaves, but they couldn't hear their conversation. But he didn't sit because he was tired, it was just a gesture to calm himself down after a high degree of tension. He sat down and pointed at the people under the eaves. "Look at them. Cultivators don't care about them and you don't care about them either. But these individuals that you don't care about have gathered into a hole. That's the key to my victory today. So, my friend, I need to know some details. Some details you don't think are important, but they're very important to me. I don't know some things. Maybe it will become a fatal flaw in the next plan. I'm afraid your investment will go down the drain because of this. You'll be happy if I get tricked and suffer losses. But if I get tricked and die, you won't be happy. You've helped me so many times and I'm grateful. But I know I didn't conquer you with my looks alone. You must hope that I have other uses in the future. So I think since I've invested so much today, you should explain some things to me clearly. It's better to make it clear in advance so that we can talk about it. It's better than breaking up later. Bai Yanjun listened to his words and was stunned for a while. Then he suddenly laughed. He laughed and pointed at the cloud above his head. You little brat, you're using the method you used on him on me? This is what you meant by, at least make people think that you're on my side, huh? Li Yunxin sighed. Stop it. I'm serious. He'll come to talk to me in a while. If I don't need your help, then I'll have to use my trump card. Bai Yanjun's eyes widened, because of that, stop it. But he really didn't know how to answer him, so he couldn't just brush his sleeves and leave. He was stunned for a moment and pretended that he hadn't heard this sentence. After thinking for a while, he sneered. You're thinking too much. Do you really think that I released 1,000,000 ghosts because of you? Li Yunxin was unhurried. His expression was as usual. I'd like to hear the details. Speaking of this, Bai Yanjun let out a long sigh. Tell me what you know first. Then I'll tell you some things. But there are some things that you don't want to know now. Okay. Li Yunxin didn't hesitate. After thinking for a while, he said, that night when I saw you, you told me the method to take over Dragon Sun's body. During that time, I noticed something unusual. That is, you seemed to value that big ghost very much. It was the night after the Baohua Pavilion and Baohua Gathering. That big ghost ate the great painter from the capital and wore his skin to the gathering. But during the gathering, Li Yunxin and Ling Kongzi saw through it and Li Yunxin kept it in his sleeve. At that time, the big ghost was just a yin spirit with some cultivation. Like all the ghost cultivators who escaped the net, it had a strong obsession. Although this obsession would weaken as the realm of cultivation increased, and the great ghost would become more rational, the great ghost would only have the cultivation of an emptiness realm expert. It could only harm ordinary people like young Master Qin who only knew how to use talismans but didn't know how to use talismans properly. Eating the great painter and wearing his skin to Baohua Gathering, Li Yunxin couldn't believe it was a coincidence. Thus, he put it away with the intention of properly interrogating it to find out if it was Ling Kongzi's scheme. But in the end he had to believe it was really a coincidence. That big ghost was the last emperor of the Yi dynasty, great Yi Zhaowu Emperor Lu Xingyang, who guarded the small court in the city of Wei for more than 60 years. Bai Yanjun said it didn't harm people but it ate people the night before. Li Yunxin interrogated it for a long time before he realized there was a secret. According to the big ghost, it received a promise from the Yama king in his dream because of something that happened when it was alive. He promised that the small court in the city of Wei would be prosperous until he died 100 years later. Unfortunately, when the Qing army attacked, massacred the city, and killed him in the Golden Palace, the Yama king didn't show up. He broke his promise. After Emperor Yi died, the Yama king came personally to take his soul. Although the small court in the city of Wei was a small court, there were still 600,000 people in the city. At that time, the Yi dynasty had only been dead for 60 years. In many poor and remote places, people still thought it was Ye's world. Furthermore, a large number of the old and young were loyal to the Yi dynasty in the city of Wei. They were only waiting for the day when the emperor's army was restored. Then the world would still be ruled by the Lu family. After Emperor Yi died, millions of people's wishes were added to his body. Although he couldn't become a great demon like Emperor Li, who was only one step away from entering the realm of forgetfulness, it was more than enough to become a true demon. When Bai Yanjun came to take his soul, the ghost of Emperor Yi asked him why he, the Yama king, broke his promise. However, the big ghost didn't remember why he had received the Yama king's promise. He remembered that after he questioned the Yama king, Bai Yanjun was also ashamed and said, "It's just fate." He said that since the Yama king didn't finish his life, he would make up for it with his own life. Emperor Ye's ghost was filled with hatred for the destruction of his country and hatred for the Yama king for not keeping his promise. He thought that he was the emperor when he was alive and had a higher chance of taking back his country. Now that he was dead, even the people in the city were killed because of him. How could he be dismissed with some mean life? The Yama king thought about it and changed his conditions. He said that he would allow him to be the emperor of the underworld in the city of Wei. The area within 100 li of the city of Wei would be his ghost country. As for the souls that died in the city of Wei, they were all counted as his people, and he would not allow them to reincarnate. He could be the emperor of this ghost country for as long as he wanted. Emperor Yi was happy when he heard this. How was he different from the emperor of heaven? It was just that he had fewer magical powers and a smaller territory. Thus he agreed. Who would have thought that after he agreed, half of what was originally a complete soul was immediately hooked away by Yanjun. The remaining half became the big ghost that Li Yunxin had seen. It should have become a real ghost emperor, but it only became an empty realm, muddle-headed ghost cultivator. This ghost cultivator had some limited memories from when he was alive, so he unconsciously hated everything related to the Qing Emperor. Before the great painter from the capital left, the Qing Emperor had bestowed the golden seal. The big ghost had followed the Qing Emperor's aura on the golden seal to find him. Without any explanation, it had killed him. However, the big ghost was hiding from its dragon son. Coincidentally, it learned that there was a Daotong master at the Baohua gathering, so it put on its skin and went. It thought that dragon son was also a demon. If he hid there, he wouldn't dare to come and capture it. The violent storm that night at the Baohua gathering had been because Dragon Sun had searched all over the city for it. That night, Bai Yanjun said to Li Yunxin that the big ghost did not harm people. This was the truth. This muddle-headed ghost only remembered that he was still the master of the city of Wei and that the people in the city of Wei were all his people. He also brooded over the massacre in the city and blamed himself. Why would he eat his people? He would only harm the birds and beasts. Over a month after his death, the Taoist priests of the Orthodoxy came and used Tao techniques to seal and suppress the deplorable palace. This ghost emperor could not even return to his home. The remaining memory and reason soon disappeared. Finally, it became a ball of resentful aura with some reason. Hundreds of years passed in the blink of an eye. If ordinary people asked it about these things, the big ghost wouldn't remember. But Li Yunxin had other ways. He tried hypnosis. He had done this many times in the past. The so-called completely forgotten things were actually hidden in the depths of consciousness. As long as it could be awakened, it didn't matter if it couldn't be remembered. Li Yunxin tried this ghost as a ball of chaotic memory. The result was unexpectedly good. It was that night that he promised to do the first thing for the poor ghost emperor. He broke the seal of Daotong that suppressed the abandoned palace for hundreds of years. A few days later, on the night when he rebuilt the Dharmakaya of Qi Wen, he used the yang energy of 300,000 people in the city of Wei to break the hundreds of years-old prohibition seal. Because of him, the ghost emperor regained some consciousness and was able to return to the abandoned palace. He became his most reliable ally. He first took in the soul of the old beggar, then summoned the ghosts of the soldiers who were suppressed in the abandoned palace, and promised to return a favor. So after that, the ghost emperor and even his subordinate Diwu Boyu became Li Yunxin's information source and intelligence center. As for the ghost emperor, he had indeed returned the favor on this day. After saying this, Li Yunxin stopped to take a breath and looked at Bai Yanjun. But I'm curious, why did you make a promise to the ghost emperor? After that, you clearly broke your promise once. Why did you harm him again? The White Hell Lord heaved a long sigh and stopped smiling. He turned around and said, "The adopted daughter of Golden Rock, Bai Yunxin, stopped people outside the Wilderness Mountain. It wasn't because of you, right?" "No." Li Yunxin answered him, "It was because of the ghost emperor." "Do you know why?" He refused to say. It's not that he didn't want to say, but he couldn't remember. I really can't remember." The White Hell Lord let out a shrill laugh. However, it sounded like self-deprecation or helplessness. "The first time I granted him the prosperity of the nation, it was because of the adopted daughter of the Golden Rock. But the details, well, it's better if you don't know. Then the city of Wei was massacred and the Emperor Yi was killed. In fact, it wasn't because I broke my promise, but it was really the right time. It's better if you don't know the details." Li Yunxin rolled her eyes. "Then why don't you tell me something that I can know?" "Alas. What I can let you know is that the second time I didn't break my promise." Bai Yanjun squinted his eyes and smiled. "I said I wouldn't hook his soul and let him reincarnate. I said I would give him 100 miles of the city of Wei, and all the souls in the city wouldn't reincarnate. Which one didn't I do? I just said to hook half of his soul so that he would forget some things and not become a great demon of the realm. And the souls of those who died didn't reincarnate, I just hooked them to the nether world." Bai Yanjun sighed again. "But you did him a favor. He remembered your favor. He remembers your favor and then asks me for his people. These millions of ghosts are the souls of those who died in the city of Wei in the past 400 years. I gave them all to him, it's not a breach of trust. So, Bai Yanjun sighed with a sad face and looked at Li Yunxin mischievously, these millions of souls were given to the Emperor of Ghost because of the promise, not because of you. If you really have a trump card in your hand, I suggest you use it as soon as possible. Look, the Taoist is coming. Right next to Li Yunxin, the raindrops quickly formed and formed a human silhouette. Chapter 194. The person who came was Kun Wuxia, an hour after they parted. The moment the profound realm Taoist clone appeared, he immediately said, "Tell me about Tong Fu and Lu Ling." He said this hurriedly, as if he was afraid that he would go back on his words and couldn't take it back. Li Yunxin smiled. The Taoist couldn't resist the temptation. The first time he refused to listen was because it was related to the two sages. It would be strange if he wasn't afraid of two old monsters who had lived for 3,000 years. Once he heard that it was the two sages' private matter, he refused without thinking. But, because it was the two sages' private matter, who wouldn't want to know? A Taoist at the advanced mystical realm must have gone through many tribulations, but Li Yunxin felt that curiosity was definitely something. Curiosity was just a narrow form of survival desire. As long as he was alive and had reason, he would definitely be curious. Thus, the profound realm Taoist didn't ask about the two sages, but asked about Yunzi and Ling Kongzi. He lied to himself, and Li Yunxin was willing to help him. Otherwise, how could he use him to do things for him? A profound realm Taoist. What a rare opportunity and resources. He exhaled lightly, still sitting on the roof, and said, "Cultivators talk about fate. I told you so many things before because I killed you, Yunzi, and I don't want to get into a conflict with you again. When I was in the sky, it wasn't finished. Now that I'm on the ground, it's already finished. Now that you came to me and asked me about it, if you really want to know, I can't just give you my information for free." Kun Wuxia looked at him. "I'm a mystical realm cultivator. Don't act like that, friend." Li Yunxin didn't mind his words at all. "You're in the advanced mystical realm and I just entered the true realm. But what was the result? In the sky you should have killed me, but you didn't. Now you're on the ground asking me. Everything is your own choice. If you're still fixated on realms and abilities, thinking that they can decide everything, and if you insist on looking at me like I'm a child, then there's nothing left for us to talk about. Why don't you just kill me and take my treasures? Isn't that simpler and more direct?" But the problem was that in this world, force could not solve all problems. In fact, it can only solve very few problems. It had been a very, very long time since the sect leader of the Grotto Heaven had heard such words, to be taught a lesson. He was still a 15-year-old kid. However, after a moment of silence, Kun Wuxia wasn't angry. Instead he smiled. "If you cultivate the Tao, you will be an even more outstanding person than Lu Ling." Unfortunately, he became a fiendish demon. "Alright, you can answer my first question. Yunzi is looking for the jade slip of illumination." Li Yunxin answered him immediately, "But the news seems to come from another source." This sentence was cryptic. However, it was enough for Kun Wuxia to understand that Ling Kongzi was also looking for the translucent jade slip. This also meant that the two saints were secretly searching for that thing. Translucent jade slip. Kun Wuxia didn't seem to be unfamiliar with this name. He repeated it in a low voice and raised his head. "That thing is in your hands. First tell me, what kind of person is my mother, Shangguanyu?" Li Yunxin didn't answer but asked a question instead. The heavy rain was still pouring down, but this question caused Kun Wuxia to be slightly stunned once again. "You." The several hundred-year-old Lao Dao said hesitantly, Your parents actually didn't tell you?" "Never." Sigh. Lao Dao sighed. "Ask me another question." The words he said and the way he spoke gave people an illusion, as if he wasn't a profound realm cultivator who might have killed Li Yunxin, but an old man who wasn't willing to talk about a certain topic. This attitude slightly surprised Li Yunxin, but it was also within his expectations. In the sky, when he mentioned his father, Li Chunfeng, there was only astonishment in Kun Wuxia's eyes. But when he mentioned his mother, Shangguanyu, the astonishment was mixed with some fear. Something that could make a profound realm Taoist feel fear must be an important matter. He never thought that the other party would really answer him. It was just to make the other party refuse so that he could make another request. Thus, even if it was a little too much, the other party could accept it. Thus, Li Yunxin smiled and said, "Then accompany me to see an old guy." Kun Wuxia looked at him in surprise. After a while he shook his head and smiled. "I didn't kill you for now. It's already a big concession. You should know that in your hands are the lives of 25 low-level cultivators of Dao Tong, a transcendent realm cultivator and a true realm cultivator. Now you want to borrow I's power?" Do you want I to go with you to see that Emperor Yi? This matter, those 25 people are Yunzi's fault. I won't take it. And I'm not going to see the Ghost Emperor. Li Yunxin said seriously, you are also interested in the Jade Slip of Enlightenment, but it's not with me anymore. You also know that the Jade Slip of Enlightenment stayed in Daotong and Kenzo for a while, but none of you can open it. You can? Kun Wuzi narrowed his eyes and looked at him. I can. Li Yunxin said without hesitation. That's something that even the two sages couldn't do. I find it hard to believe that you aren't bluffing. You also know that it's something that even the two sages couldn't do. Then the question is the person who created the Jade Slip of Enlightenment really so much more powerful than the two sages that they couldn't do anything? That's obviously impossible. The answer is that the two sages couldn't find the right solution, but I have one. Li Yunxin stood up. Accompany me to see the Lord Dongting. I want a man and something from him. At the Lord Dongting's place? Kun Wuzi's eyes lit up. Naturally, he didn't think that Li Yunxin would hand that thing over to him easily, but he didn't expect that he could find its whereabouts so easily. He thought that he would have to go through threats and bargaining. There's nothing to hide. It's indeed at his place. Li Yunxin stood up and looked at Kun Wuzi solemnly. But first, from now on, I hope that you can really understand one thing, Li Yunxin said in a deep voice. I know how to open the Jade Slip of Enlightenment. This is my trump card. Now that I'm telling you, you can make good use of it. I don't care about the twists and turns in Daotong, but from Yunzi's actions from the perspective of human desires, and from your reaction today, it's definitely not an amicable one. You first refused to hear the secret of the two sages and then regretted it. This means that a certain desire in your heart overpowered your respect for the two sages. So, if you didn't excitedly run to the two sages to ask for credit the moment you returned to the mountain, you can't deny that my trump card is of great significance to you. Kun Wuzi smiled. But Li Yunxin didn't smile. He stood on the roof facing Kun Wuzi and said, you have to know that the current me isn't the me that was chased by people, and I'm not the me that hid in this city. I'm now the Wei River Dragon King, a great demon of the realm of truth. I own the city of Wei and I have a friend from the Ghost Emperor. I'm still the Dragon Son, and I know the secret that even the two sages want to know. This city of Wei and the Wei River will be my lair, and I also know Dao techniques. If that's the case, how do you see me? The smile on Kun Wuzi's face slowly disappeared. He pondered for a while and let out a sigh. We can't be allies. Even I talking to you like this is already going against the world's will. I don't expect to be friends. I'm just saying, you have to be careful with me. Li Yunxin pointed to the northwest. If we do this together, it will be a good start. Even if we have to fight and kill each other in the future, at least we can get what we need before we both lose. Both lose. Kun Wuzi smiled and shook his head. But in the end he said, I will go with you this time. When the rain reached the Dongting Lake, it had weakened a lot. Misty rain Dongting. This reminded Li Yunxin of the first time he met Red Lady. There was no misty rain that night, but it was still misty. And the second time he talked in the wooden pavilion by the lake and listened to the chirping of cicadas under the bright sun. He stood in the wooden pavilion for a while and then sighed in a low voice. The cultivator of the profound realm didn't know why he sighed, but he also looked at the Dongting and looked into the distance. If Ling can get it back, I can. Li Yunxin looked at him strangely. The person I want is not her. As for Lu Ling, you deal with it yourself. I've already told you that she is here. She wanted to kill me before, but I'm not that generous. He sighed again. I want that old thing's daughter. Chapter 195. Kun Wuzi is a little surprised. After a while he asks, what do you mean? Literally. Li Yunxin remains silent for a while and looks up at the sky. Then he whispers to himself, it's raining heavily. In this way many houses in the city will collapse. After saying this, his eyes suddenly turn golden. Fine scales appear on his cheeks, and his black hair is mixed with white. Clouds and mist rise from his hair, like white hair fluttering and turning into mist. Stop. He shouts in a low voice. The rain by Dongting Lake immediately stops. It turns from light rain to drizzle and then into scattered raindrops. The thick clouds in the sky roll away, shrink, and turn into wisps of white clouds. And the gray color that fades from the clouds seems to run into Li Yunxin's hair. The original black and white hair turns black again. The fine scales on his cheeks also fade, and the golden color in his eyes also fades. He becomes a handsome young man again. As the thick clouds disperse, the sun comes out. Unfortunately, it's not the sun anymore. He and Yunzi fought in the afternoon, and now it's almost dusk. The sky is dim, and the sun sets in the west of the distant mountain. There is a whole red cloud on the mountain. Li Yunxin sighs, "What a pity." Then he raises his head and takes a step forward, shouting in the direction of Mount Jun in Dongting Lake, "I am Li Yunxin, the Wei River Dragon King. Where is the Lord Dongting? Come out and meet me." His voice rolled out as if it had substance, dispersing the mist on the surface of the lake. Wind and ripples appear on the water surface, and the flowers and trees near the Dragon King Temple are shaken. People in Egret town also hear the sound, but they dare not come out to have a look. Although this place is far from the city of Wei, the thunder and golden light of the fight between Li Yunxin and Yunzi can be seen. At this moment, hearing the muffled sound, even the most materialistic people should realize that someone with the omnipotent has made such a big scene. It was also very likely that he was the Dragon King they had been worshipping for more than a month. However, the sound startled birds, beasts and humans. It even broke through the mist on the surface of the lake, but the Lord Dongting did not appear. Li Yunxin quietly waited for 3 breaths of time before shouting again. There was still no response. He turned to look at Kun Wuzi. "I'm not giving you any face." The profound realm Taoist thought for a moment and asked Li Yunxin, "Is Ling really in this lake?" Her cultivation was destroyed by Yunxin, but her soul was left behind by a magic treasure. "I saw her in the lake before. She's in Muyun. Do you know what Muyun is?" Kun Wuzi remained silent, but his expression gradually turned gloomy. It was obvious that he knew about the past. He stared at the deep lake and said in a low voice, "Then I'll have to offend you." This sound didn't seem to be directed at Li Yunxin. Although the voice was low, it was unexpectedly clear and loud. Then he took a step forward and reached out his hand. It was the first time for Li Yunxin to see the means of a profound realm cultivator. Kun Wuzi's hand was white and thin, as if his knuckles were angular. First, he put his palm up and slanted forward as if he was inserting it under something. After another breath, he suddenly turned it over. Li Yunxin gasped, because he saw the sky above Dongting Lake. The sky was originally close to dusk, but now the blue color is a little yellow. However, the moment Kun Wuzi turned his palm over, the sky suddenly darkened. Because the lake water ran to the sky. As if the sky and the earth had been turned upside down, a thin mirror-like water surface appeared in the sky, extending from here to very far away. Li Yunxin guessed that the size of the water should be the same as the Dongting Lake on the ground. Kun Wuzi turned the water surface of the Dongting Lake to the sky. But things were not as simple as he thought. The next moment, the water in the sky began to pour. It was not a drizzle, nor was it a torrential downpour. Even the violent rain that Li Yunxin did at the Weishui River in the city of Wei couldn't be compared with this momentum. The water in the entire Dongting Lake, from the water surface above the sky, poured down. If this Dongting Lake was round, then there was one more pillar between the sky and the earth at this moment. If this Dongting Lake was square, then there was one more square pillar between the sky and the earth at this moment. The water in the sky hit the surface of the lake with a roar, making a loud noise that shook the earth. First, the branches and leaves of the flowers and trees fell one after another, and then the temple of the Dragon King collapsed in a violent earthquake. When water met water, the energy burst out like an explosion. The waves of water in all directions were like a sputtering torrent of metal, and the torrent was extremely sharp. The wooden pavilion they were in was close to the lake. Only for a moment, the wooden pavilion was completely destroyed by the rushing water, turning into the tiniest pieces. Both of them were submerged in the water. Kun Wuzi was fine, but even Li Yunxin's strong body, there was a crisscross bloodstain on his chest. He had never seen such a strange scene. The water column stood between the sky and the earth as if it was frozen. But in fact, the water in the Dongting Lake was carried to the sky by some mysterious and powerful force, and then it fell back into the lake. But even so, the water level of the lake didn't rise, and it even dropped slightly. It was really the water in the lake. Li Yunxin had retreated dozens of steps, but the terrible sound still numbed his ears. The sound of a huge waterfall is like thunder, let alone the water of the entire Dongting pouring down from the very high sky. Such a loud sound and sound wave, he subconsciously looked behind him. The temple of the Dragon King had collapsed. Everything that was visible to the naked eye by the lakeside had disappeared. The earth was still shaking and trembling. The houses in Egret town couldn't withstand such a violent vibration. Maybe many people would die. Kun Wuzi was still standing beside him with his hands behind his back, looking at the water column in the sky calmly. In fact, even though they had already retreated dozens of steps, the huge and boundless water column was still like a high wall in their field of vision, as if it would collapse the next moment and engulf them in the terrifyingly deep water, and the two of them were like two ants. You will realize something when you reach the mysterious realm. Kun Wuxia was silent for a while and then said in a deep voice, realize that those below the mysterious realm are nothing more than people in the secular world. And in the true realm you can barely grasp some power. But, it's not worth mentioning. He looked at Li Yunxin sideways. You said that I didn't respect you. At this moment, you should know what kind of respect I have shown you before. Li Yunxin stared at the terrible wonder in front of him for a while, and then said calmly, power doesn't mean everything. Kun Wuxia smiled, that's why you are a rare smart person. That's why I didn't kill you. Just because of what you said. Before Li Yunxin had time to answer him, a more terrible sound came from the sky. The water seemed to have flowed out. The water column between the sky and the earth was shrinking rapidly, because the water surface above the sky disappeared. The last bit of water was poured down and quickly fell into the lake. And in the water, Li Yunxin saw an incomparably huge figure. He turned into his real body, which was as long as 300 meters. 300 meters, what kind of concept was that? Maybe the length was not very intuitive. But in terms of height, it was roughly equivalent to a 300-story skyscraper in his previous world. An adult man standing in front of the dragon body of 300 meters was like a grain of dust. However, the huge figure that appeared in the water of Dongting Lake at this moment couldn't even be described with the word huge. The water column that was shrinking rapidly was like a fish tank standing on the vast land, and the big fish was kept in the fish tank. But it was not so much kept in the fish tank, but it was more like a cage, because it was as big as half of the fish tank, and even one of its tentacles was as long as Li Yunxin's real body. The big fish was red all over and even its belly was dark golden red. One scale on its body was as big as the entire Egret town, and the scales emitted a faint golden light in the water as if they were mixed with gold powder. Its huge mouth could occupy the sight of two people, but the darkness in its mouth was bottomless. It was definitely not darkness that could be formed by shadows. It didn't look any different from a scarlet carp, but such a big carp had already exceeded any common sense. Li Yunxin knew that this was the real body of Lord Dongting. But such a big fish that was poured out by Kun Wuxia from the sky only appeared in front of them for a short moment. Almost as soon as Li Yunxin saw it clearly, the big fish disappeared. A dazzling red light appeared in the air and quickly turned into a human figure. It was the Taoist Li that Li Yunxin saw on Mount June. This Lord Dongting didn't say anything after he appeared. Only when the lake water returned to the lake with a roar, did he appear by Dongting Lake with a flash of red light. Li Yunxin stared at his feet. He was about 3 meters away from the lake. The rumor was true. His nest was turned upside down, but he still didn't go more than 3 meters away from Dongting Lake. Kun Wuxia was in the mysterious realm. It was said that Lord Dongting was also in the mysterious realm, but no one knew which stage of the mysterious realm he was in. Anyway, the mysterious realm Taoist's seemingly easy method had left a terrible and deep impression in Li Yunxin's heart. And Lord Dongting, a monster in the mysterious realm. Who could trap it in this Dongting Lake for 2,000 years? At this moment, Lord Dongting was furious and his whole body was glowing with red light. He raised his eyebrows, and his nostrils which were not small became bigger because of extreme anger. When he learned of Tan Wen's death, he exhaled steaming mist, but now even the mist became light red, like a cloud of fire. Kun Wuxia, how dare you? Lord Dongting's voice was like the friction of charcoal, as if every word would make sparks spluttering in the air. I didn't want to talk to you, but you came to me. You are too much. The mysterious realm Taoist just smiled. Lord Dongting is also bold. He dared to embezzle our Daotong magic treasure and trap our Daotong cultivators. As far as I know, he also wants Muyun. Kun Wuxia's voice became low. Lord Dongting, don't you know that there is a way to die? The two powerful figures in the mysterious realm confronted each other. Li Yunxin took 2 steps back and said nothing. Hearing Kun Wuxia's threat, Lord Dongting was so angry that he laughed. Your Daotong cultivator Ling Kongzi killed Qi, one of my water nationality. Now you dare to come to me and ask for an explanation? Daotong is strong and can be unreasonable. But in front of me, I'm not afraid of you being unreasonable. This Dongting has a radius of thousands of miles. I have been managing it for 3,000 years. Do you think my mysterious realm monster body is like those little demons that you can bully and kill? Kun Wuxia glanced at Li Yunxin and said. Li Yunxin didn't have time to stop him. Jiwen? Kun Wuxia sneered, but she is still alive. But it's not your fault, even I don't know how he took Chi Wen's body. If I didn't see it with my own eyes, I wouldn't even think in that direction. Since this little friend can take Qi Wen's body, he must be able to kill her too. In my opinion, my Daodong's Ling Kongzi and your water nationality's Qi Wen were both tricked by him. Instead of venting your anger on me, why don't you vent it on him? For a moment, Li Yunxin really wanted to show his real body and escape back to the city of Wei. He didn't figure out Kun Wuzi. At least he didn't catch him completely. He didn't know that Kun Wuzi's words to Lord Dongting, saying that he took Qi Wen's body and set up Ling Kongzi were unintentional, and that Kun Wuzi really wanted to hurt him. Maybe as a mysterious realm cultivator, he had been used to great power and was not good at tricks. As a result, the matter of seizing Qi Wen's body and plotting against Ling Kongzi was already an insignificant detail to him, something that he could casually mention. It was also possible that he really wanted to bring trouble to himself. Li Yunxin would tell him about it sooner or later, but not now. He wanted to use the momentum of killing Yunzi to make Kun Wuzi talk with him temporarily. Then he would use Kun Wuzi's momentum to talk to Lord Dongting, to get back what he wanted and get back the person he wanted. With enough understanding, he could guide him according to the situation. Kun Wuzi should know all this. But now, he didn't care about his situation and just casually said it as an interesting matter. Li Yunxin sneered in his heart. Before leaving the city, he told Kun Wuzi some words on the roof of Wang Sheng's calligraphy shop. He hoped that Kun Wuzi could face the power he had. But at that time, Kun Wuzi only smiled faintly, and Li Yunxin wasn't sure if Kun Wuzi really took it to heart. And just now, this mysterious realm Taoist showed his magical power and told Li Yunxin, "Those below the mysterious realm are nothing more than mortals." And now, Li Yunxin completely understood. He didn't win the mysterious realm Taoist's respect from the beginning. Maybe Kun Wuzi didn't make a move because of some things he knew, but it didn't mean that he regarded him as a well-matched opponent. He took a deep breath and sneered in his heart again. This feeling wasn't good. Furthermore, he would never be like a child who begged the adults bitterly, throwing a tantrum and throwing things to tell the adults, "I'm really not a child anymore." He would never say the same words to Kun Wuzi again. He would use something real to make this profound realm Taoist pay the price for underestimating him. He would also teach him a lesson, to let him know that he could have been his ally once, but his foolish and stubborn arrogance had ruined that opportunity. It might be tomorrow or it might be 10 years later. But no matter what, he wasn't a generous person. Chapter 196. However, Li Yunxin didn't leave this place in the end. Because he was now sure that the restriction imposed on Lord Dongting was something that he couldn't break no matter what. Then he would just have to face the worst result. Anyway, his life had never been smooth. But after 2 breaths, he and Kun Wuzi were slightly surprised. Because of Lord Dongting's reaction. After hearing Kun Wuzi's words, this big demon of the water tribe was stunned for a while. The flame-like mist around him suddenly disappeared without a trace. He opened his mouth wide like a fish that couldn't breathe. "Not dead. Have you seen it with your own eyes? Where is it?" Kun Wuzi frowned slightly. Because he had said it clearly just now, Li Yunxin took Qi Wen's body. Therefore, the content of Lord Dongting's 3 questions sounded like sarcasm. But his tone and expression didn't seem to be sarcasm at all. And Jinjin was very concerned about where Qi Wen was. So after a moment of hesitation, Kun Wuzi said again tentatively, "I have said it very clearly. Qi Wen is not dead, but she is not the Qi Wen you know. This little kid set up a scheme to take her body." This time he even raised his hand and pointed at Li Yunxin. Li Yunxin sneered, remembering everything that had happened at this moment in her heart. But it seemed that Kun Wuzi didn't care about what he thought. Lord Dongting didn't care about it either. Instead, he raised his eyebrows again and shouted angrily, "Don't be deliberately mystifying. If you dare to use this to make fun of me, no matter what kind of Taoist master you are, I will make sure that you can't walk out of this Dongting. Where on earth is he?" Kun Wuzi finally turned his head and looked at Li Yunxin. They saw the surprise in each other's eyes. Lord Dongting was not a stupid demon. Li Yunxin had dealt with him before. He knew that even if he wasn't a schemer, he wouldn't be unable to understand a single sentence. As for Kun Wuzi, he understood the Lord Dongting even more. He knew that this demon was not someone easy to deal with. But now, if the Lord Dongting wasn't deliberately mystifying things, then something unexpected must have happened that even profound realm cultivators couldn't figure out. Without waiting for Kun Wuzi to speak again, Li Yunxin looked at Lord Dongting and said calmly, "The 9th young master is already dead. I plotted to kill him and then I took his house. Now I am Qi Wen." Lord Dongting finally turned his face to Li Yunxin. He stared at him for a while and sneered, "I don't know what method you used to produce dragon chi in your body, but you are not hatred." He looked at Li Yunxin gloomily, "But you are indeed a Yin god and not a human. What are you planning?" They were not on the same channel. This was the only thought in Li Yunxin's mind. The conversation between the three people had an unexpected and strange situation. So far, Li Yunxin's conclusion was that as long as the topic was related to taking over Dragon Sun's body, it would be automatically ignored by Lord Dongting. And this strange situation was far beyond the understanding of ordinary people. But in the field that he had been involved in, it was achievable. But the problem was that in his previous world, it was quite difficult to achieve this, no matter what kind of intervention method was used. The physical and psychological state of the person being interfered with, as well as many other external factors, would directly affect the result. Not to mention, this world, a great demon like Lord Dongting. Before today, Li Yunxin had never truly seen the power of a high-level cultivator. Yunzi could be considered a high-level cultivator, but his stupidity and arrogance sent him into a trap, and the power he displayed in the battle was not even 1/10 of his own. But today Li Yunxin saw Kun Wuzi's means. The power of high-level cultivators was not in the aspect of power. It was not something that could be summarized as tyrannical, extremely fast, and abundant spiritual power. And this kind of Lord Dongting. How could such a situation appear in his body? The unhappiness caused by Kun Wuzi's contempt was quickly replaced by surprise, and this surprise was positive and positive. Li Yunxin took another step forward and stared at Lord Dongting. "I took over Qi Wen's body." Lord Dongting also stared at him and sneered, "You don't want to say anything? Do you think that I will be afraid of a Taoist just because you brought him here?" Li Yunxin turned around and looked at Kun Wuzi. "What's going on?" The profound realm Taoist's face did not look good. He looked at Li Yunxin, then looked at Kun Wuzi, frowned and said, "You two, the two of us are not in cahoots," Li Yunxin said sincerely. However, his words couldn't refute the truth. A profound realm great demon seemed to be controlled by some kind of mysterious power, acting like a puppet that could be toyed with by anyone. This matter made Kun Wuzi, who was also a profound realm cultivator, feel uneasy. Profound realm Taoists could be fearless when they thought that they could understand and control something. But profound realm Taoists also cherished their lives more than anyone else, when a situation that they could not completely understand appeared. One's life was not something that could be casually risked, especially when one had already spent hundreds of years of effort on this matter. Thus, after Kun Wuzi remained silent for a few breaths, Li Yunxin had a bad premonition. This profound realm Taoist seemed to be planning to leave. Just like how he didn't immediately kill a demon that had just advanced to the true realm because of the Great Formation, now he was also planning to leave because of a little unexpected situation. This was an overly cautious Taoist. Fortunately, this kind of virtue did not exist on Yunzi back then. Lord Dongting is also aware of the weird situation now. He did not speak, instead calming down from his extreme anger. Similarly, he wanted to understand what had happened between the three of them. However, Kun Wuzi finally opened his mouth. "Ridiculous." After saying this, he raised his hand as if he was about to leave. It was at this critical moment that a sentence escaped from Li Yunxin's mouth. This time Kun Wuzi heard his words, and so did Lord Dongting. It was clear and short, but neither of them could clearly hear what he wanted to say. It seemed to be another kind of language. Li Yunxin repeated that sentence. Then he raised his hand and wrote a few symbols in the air. "This is the restriction of the Jade Slip of Clarity. Do you know that the Jade Slip of Clarity has a restriction?" Just as he expected, this sentence stopped Kun Wuzi. The profound realm Taoist slowly lowered his hand and shouted in a low voice, "I don't want to know about this." "But you already know," Li Yunxin immediately replied him, and at the same time he turned to Lord Dongting. "You should also know. The Jade Slip of Clarity is with you. You must have played with it before. After playing with it, your demonic energy will open it. Then have you seen this line of words?" The line of words that he wrote with his spiritual energy in the air was actually floating there. Lord Dongting only took a glance at the line of words, and his face revealed a shocked expression. "That thing is the Jade Slip of Clarity?" "Look, I'm telling the truth." Li Yunxin spread out his hand toward Kun Wuzi. "The Jade Slip of Clarity is with him. And I've seen the Jade Slip of Clarity before, so I know what the restriction is." He then turned to Lord Dongting. "It is indeed this thing. The relic of the Art Saint, the thing that the two sages are looking for. It has been in Daotong for a very long time, and no one has been able to open it. Even if they could open it, they wouldn't be able to break the restriction. Now that it is in your hands, you're in big trouble. Kun Wuxi might not be able to do anything to you, but since the two sages are here personally, you won't be able to do anything. Lord Dongting was stunned on the spot and he blinked his big eyes. I'm here for this thing, Li Yunxin said to him. And also Red Lady. Leave both of them to me and I won't tell anyone that you have it. Kun Wuxi can be your guarantor. However, after hearing his words, Kun Wuxi and Lord Dongting almost snorted coldly at the same time. What does this have to do with I? Lord Dongting also sneered. You little god, how would I know that you didn't see the jade slip by chance, and then casually made up some strange story to deceive us? My daughter? Give it to you? What a joke. Are you going to help me? Li Yunxin sighed and turned to look at Kun Wuxi. The profound realm Taoist smiled. The current situation is not within I's expectations. If you can explain clearly, this old thing must have been bewitched previously, then I will only consider it for a while. Don't force me. Li Yunxin took a step forward and stared at Kun Wuxi, then at Lord Dongting. I don't need the jade slip of clarity today, but Red Lady must have it today. Kun Wuxi stopped smiling. So what if I force you? Red Lady. Could it be that she has become your tribulation or inner demon, and you have just entered the true realm and your realm is not stable, so you want to quickly settle her matter? In that case, I want to see how you are going to convince this old thing. I have already called him out from his nest, isn't that enough? Li Yunxin shook his head speechlessly and sighed. He remained silent for a while, then looked at the two profound realm experts in front of him and sneered. The two of you seem to want to see me make a fool of myself. I can't defeat you, so I still have to beg you. But let me tell you, even a rabbit will bite when it's anxious. Kun Wuxi sneered. Li Yunxin ignored him and looked at Lord Dongting first. First of all, you have to know that the two sages really don't want others to know that they want the jade slip of clarity. That's why I wrote those words just now, that's why this person had such a blind dog's eyes. Then he looked at Kun Wuxi. The two sages have been working for so long, but still haven't opened the jade slip. It's because of this matter. He raised his hand and pointed at the line of words that was still floating in the air. Then he said slowly and clearly, this line of words means, how are you? This is the Rakshasa language. Writing, how are you? Once the jade slip of clarity is opened, dozens of small spots of light will appear on it. The key to unlocking this restriction lies in those spots of light. Before Kun Wuxi could say anything, Li Yunxin had already raised his hand again and quickly wrote a second line of words in the air. Then this line of words will be able to undo the restriction. Writing, I'm fine. Thank you. What I mean is, I'm fine. Thank you. It's that simple. You just didn't find the right method. A strange expression appeared on Li Yunxin's face, as if he really wanted to laugh out loud, but at this moment he had no choice but to maintain a cold and serious expression. Now, the two of you know how to undo the restriction, but the two sages still don't. Do the two of you know what this means? The strange silence lasted for 3 breaths of time. You brat, you tricked me. Kun Wuxi took a deep breath and looked at Li Yunxin. Lord Dongting also widened his eyes. He looked at Li Yunxin, then at Kun Wuxi, as if he was hesitating whether he should make a decision or not. You forced me to do this. Do you think I'm willing to use this trump card? Li Yunxin laughed coldly. Now, the two of you know how to undo the restriction. You might even doubt whether I'm telling the truth or not. Don't worry, let me tell you, it's absolutely true. If you don't believe me, you can go back and ask the two sages. But the problem is, the two of them want this item. If the Daotong and Kenzo work together, obtaining this jade slip of clarity would be as easy as blowing off dust. But they still allowed it to wander outside for so long, and even now they are still acting in secret. This means that this jade slip contains something that they don't want others to see. But now, the two of you already know how to open it, before they did. Li Yunxin sneered, maybe the result wasn't so bad. Your two superiors only reprimanded you for a while and let the matter go. I believe that you really didn't have the guts to open the jade slip and look at it. Or, you said that I'm like an ant, but in the eyes of the two sages, what are you? Kun Wuxi remained silent. After a while he said, I can still kill you now. Then Lord Dongting will probably be very happy to spread this information and kill you. Or maybe you don't know that I didn't arrange it beforehand. After I die, someone will still spread this information to the world. Li Yunxin turned to Lord Dongting and stretched out his hand. Give me the jade slip. The profound realm demon's expression kept changing, as if he was still hesitating. Li Yunxin looked at him and said, there's a 50% chance that what I said is true. If what I said is true, then there's a 50% chance that the two sages will personally come to get it and kill you. In the most optimistic estimation, there's only a 25% chance that you'll die. But the problem is, do you dare to play with your life? Give it to me. After such a stern shout, Lord Dongting finally glared at him and stretched out his hand. Then a transparent, small treasure appeared in his palm. Li Yunxin calmly looked at the treasure and smiled. Mr. Cohen, have you seen it clearly? This is the translucent jade slip. Do you want it? Cohen Wuxi's expression was very unsightly, but he didn't say anything. Li Yunxin laughed out loud. That's right. You don't dare to take it. I'm the two sages, so I'll definitely think that you've peeked at the thing inside. You don't dare to bet on that 25% chance. After saying that, he stretched out his hand. Lord Dongting immediately throws the jade slip to him, and then lets out a sigh of relief imperceptibly. It was as if he had thrown away a soldering iron. Li Yunxin held the jade slip in his hand. Finally, in his heart, he also let out a long sigh. His tense body relaxed. Finally, he got it back. But Cohen Wuxi was still looking at him. Lord Dongting was also looking at him. The gazes of the two profound realm experts were like ferocious beasts that had locked onto their prey. They took in Li Yunxin's every move. Li Yunxin knew what they were waiting for. He infused his demonic energy into the jade slip. Then the jade slip lit up. A ray of light flashed across the jade slip, and heavenly music sounded. Lord Dongting might have already tried it, but it seemed to be the first time Cohen Wuxi had seen it. He opened his eyes wide and took in every detail. Then he saw the first line of words written by Li Yunxin. It was exactly the same. Then he saw Li Yunxin touch the dozens of small spots of light below the first line of words 18 times. Then he raised his head and looked at Cohen Wuxi and Lord Dongting. I'm going to undo it. He touched the jade slip again. The two lines of words and the spots of light disappeared, and the surface of the jade slip turned light yellow. A few small, square-shaped patterns appeared. Li Yunxin wiped the jade slip with his hand, and it became a small transparent object again. I've undone the restriction set by the painting saint. He smiled. I'll ask you one last time. Do you still want this thing? Cohen Wuxi snorted. It's true. But, you probably don't have long to live. After saying this, he smiled. I won't kill you. Lord Dongting probably won't either. But everyone in the world will know that the translucent jade slip is in your hands. The two sages will know soon as well. When that time comes, so, this is my condition, both of you. Li Yunxin said calmly, from the day I knew that the two sages wanted this thing, I never thought that I would be able to live comfortably. I also knew that sooner or later the whole world would know about this. But at least before the two sages or the two sages people find me, I want you to protect me and not be disturbed by those idiots who think they're smart. Do this, and when the day comes, I won't talk about the two of you. You can sleep peacefully. I know what you're going to say, but why should you believe me? I also have the same question. Why should I believe that you will protect me? But my advantage is that I'm 15 years old this year. You two are more than 3,000 years old, and one is a few hundred years old. If we die together. I have the guts and the means to drag you down with me. If the two of you think that you're ruthless enough, you can give it a try. Li Yunxin smiled lightly. After all, a man should be ruthless to himself. Cohen Wuxi finally restrained his expression and looked deeply at Li Yunxin. Good. You're indeed an ambitious person. Li Yunxin tilted his head. What about you? The profound realm demon looked at Cohen Wuxi, then at Li Yunxin. He realized that this shouldn't be a trap set by the other party. Cohen Wuxi was famous for cherishing his life and being cautious. He would never use himself as a bait. He hesitated for a moment, then said in a deep voice, Tell me first. You said that Chiwen is still alive. What's going on? It's because I took his body, but you can't hear it. Li Yunxin sighed. Give me Red Lady first, then we'll talk about this. Let's talk about Chiwen first. Li Yunxin stared at him for a while, then helplessly put his hand into his pocket. After feeling it for a while, he frowned and said, Damn it. Then he stretched out his hand in front of Lord Dongting and opened it. There was a reverse scale in his palm. Lord Dongting stared at the reverse scale for a while, then suddenly raised his head. This is, give me Red Lady first, Li Yunxin said calmly. Then I'll tell you the truth. Chapter 197. Cohen Wuxi sneered. Wails and cries could be heard from afar. Cultivators had good hearing so they could hear it clearly. It was the people of Egret crying. The power of the profound realm cultivator caused the ground beside Dongting Lake to be shaken, creating several bottomless cracks. In this era, houses made of earth and stone were not very resistant to earthquakes. It was almost dusk and many people had started to return home. There must be a lot of casualties. However, Kun Wuzi didn't care at all. After all, no one like Ling Kongzi would tell him the first commandment. He watched Li Yunxin and Lord Dongting as if they were watching a play. He didn't care about Lu Ling, who was imprisoned by Lord Dongting. Ling Kongzi, who was at the peak of the transcendent realm, was indeed worth caring about. Because it meant that there might be one more true realm cultivator in Langya Cave abode in Daotong. A true realm cultivator was a deterrent. However, Ling Kongzi, whose ocean of qi and mountain of snow had been destroyed and whose soul was hidden in the bell, he was an existence that did not matter. She is my daughter. Lord Dongting hadn't calmed down yet, and his eyes were still fixed on the reverse scale in Li Yunxin's hand. It seemed that he wanted to reach out, but he was hindered by the restriction. Don't think that what she said to you is true love. I taught her a lesson, but she was still my daughter. It's not your turn. I just want to talk to her and see if she is safe. Li Yunxin took back his hand and put the reverse scale back into his pocket. We are partners now. I think you won't refuse my little request. When he said this, he closed his eyes slightly. When Kun Wuzi saw his actions, he sneered. He wasn't the kind of person who liked to show his emotions on the surface. But the problem was that no one had ever made him, a dignified profound realm Taoist, suffer losses again and again. Therefore, when he saw Li Yunxin's action, he only thought that he was really aroused. At this moment, he really wanted to use this action to calm the surging emotions in his heart. At the very least, in his opinion, people who couldn't let go of the relationship between a man and a woman would definitely not have a very strong Tao heart. However, Li Yunxin was a fiendish demon, so he probably didn't have a Tao heart. Kun Wuzi was swayed by irrational emotions, while Lord Dongting was concerned about the reverse scale it had just seen. Both of them were profound realm experts, and they were usually very meticulous people. However, in the confrontation just now, a mere true state fiendish demon had left the two of them at their wits' end, and they had no choice but to temporarily reach a compromise with him. The psychological impact of this experience made them neglect many things at this moment. At this moment, both of them were intentionally or unintentionally releasing the intense emotions they had just endured and were in a state of extreme relaxation. They didn't seem to realize this. Therefore, they didn't pay much attention to what Li Yunxin did when he closed his eyes. He opened his folding fan and hurriedly waved it twice in front of him. This action was too common among scholars. When they were anxious, they would subconsciously do this action. Therefore, they didn't notice that after Li Yunxin opened his folding fan, he quickly glanced at the surface of the fan. It was originally a white paper fan, but now, it had turned into a colorful landscape painting. In the landscape painting, there was an inconspicuous little person, but now, there seemed to be another figure, but it was an extremely faint shadow, as if the shadow was cast by his hair on the fan. And that shadow seemed to be coming here. After Li Yunxin said that, Lord Dongting rolled his eyes and said, "Even if you want to see him, you can't see him today. If you really want to see him, then come tomorrow at noon. Since you don't want to talk to me about Qi Wen now, then let's talk tomorrow." After saying this, he turned around and said, "This matter is over. Forgive me for not accompanying you." As soon as he finished his words, his figure instantly disappeared and melted into the lake. Kun Wuzi frowned slightly. The old man left so suddenly. A moment ago he was looking at the reverse scale in Li Yunxin's hand with such an eager and intense look. But the next moment he suddenly said a few words and left. As soon as such a question arose in his mind, he heard Li Yunxin sneer. "He is smart." Kun Wuzi said with doubt. Li Yunxin looked around and found a boulder that was shaken out of the ground and sat down, "Because this matter is not over yet. Look at this pot." He stretched out his hand and drew the whole Dongting, the Egret town in the distance, the wild forest and even the city of Wei in the distance. Who will carry it? I plan to ask Yunzi to carry it. But now we are good friends, so I can't do that. Of course it can't be me. Then, someone has to be responsible for this matter. Li Yunxin raised his head and squinted at the ruins of the Egret town in the distance. There was only smoke here. It should be that someone was making a fire to cook, and the house was shaken down and caught fire. He waved his hand casually. Scales quickly appeared on his arm and then faded away. But a rain cloud had formed over the Egret town, and it was drizzling. The black smoke disappeared after a while. So you want to put the blame on him? Kun Wuzi asked. Yes. But he can't get out of the inhibition of Dongting. Everyone in the world knows this. Li Yunxin's lips showed a slightly mocking smile. You said that as long as Dao Tong believes it, it's okay. It doesn't matter whether he can get out of the inhibition or not. If you say he did it, no one will think that a profound realm immortal will frame him with such a low-level reason. You just need to make sure that no one disturbs me during this period. When the two sages or their people come to find me, these things are not important anymore. Things are not as simple as you think. Kun Wuzi looked at the Dongting. Don't think that this old thing is an ordinary demon. Some of his secrets, probably even the two sages don't know very clearly. After saying this, he was silent for a while. Then he said, there is another person who is more suitable. A fleeting smile flashed in Li Yunxin's eyes. But then he frowned and opened the folding fan again. Another person? Don't think about my people. I will never harm my own people at this time. Kun Wuzi smiled. None of your subordinates can handle such a huge matter. What I want to say, Li Yunxin opened his eyes wide. Ling Kongzi. It was a stupid idea. But he still had to say it. Because that figure hadn't come here yet. When he fought with Yunzi, they had sex. Everyone should know that dragons were here. And that Lord Dongting also regarded him as hatred that night. But when he saw him again, she bluntly told him that he was not Yazi. He must have known something. And just now that figure appeared in Li Yunxin's painting. The painting of mountains and rivers, which was made with the strength of the profound realm in an instant, could draw Yunzi's ghost in it. Naturally, it could show him many things. There were no satellites in this era. But now Li Yunxin's folding fan had become something similar. The land around the city of Wei was on his folding fan. Then, the faint figure that appeared on the fan meant that there was spiritual energy or resentment in that guy's body that Li Yunxin used to set up the array. In other words, when Li Yunxin was setting up the array, that person absorbed part of the resentment of the millions of ghost soldiers. But fortunately, it didn't affect the overall situation. And now this guy was coming here. Earlier, hatred was injured and disappeared. And this Kun Wuzi suddenly appeared near the city of Wei. Li Yunxin already knew who it was. It was unfamiliar, second brother. The real hatred. Therefore, when Kun Wuzi heard his words, he was slightly stunned. Then he sneered, you demon. Why are you so stupid now? Do you know that there is a big demon in the Wei River? Li Yunxin opened his innocent and clear eyes and quickly glanced at the fan. Who? No. Let me guess, is it that Ghost Emperor? No. That's also my friend. Kun Wuzi couldn't stand his sudden stupidity, and sneered. Just when Li Yunxin looked at the fan for the third time and closed it without batting an eyelid, he said, Hee, that Ghost Emperor is not important enough. I mean, hatred. That cheap second brother of yours. Li Yunxin was stunned for a while, then he straightened his face and said in a deep voice, no. Absolutely not. As a dragon's, I am related to hatred by blood. Maybe there will be fights and schemes in the future, but at least at this moment, I will not do such a thing. Kun Wuzi was stunned by his righteous actions and words, as if he had seen a ghost. To him, seeing a ghost was more normal than this. He frowned. Are you making fun of me? I'm serious. Li Yunxin said seriously, although I look like an unscrupulous bad guy, I'm a good, upright and kind young man in my bones. If I do such a thing, how can I live in the demon world in the future? Speaking of me, oh, that guy, the guy who killed his own brother. You cultivators think that demons are heartless, but are they really heartless? The 9 sons of the Dragon Emperor have been living in peace for 1 to 2,000 years. If they are really heartless, even if there are other great demons in the world, how hard is it to kill Qi when in the transcendent state? Li Yunxin sighed. So, not only can I not push this matter to him, but once he comes to Wei River, I have to protect him. First, it is always a wise choice to build a relationship with a strong one. Second, Li Yunxin raised his head and looked at Kun Wuzi sincerely. After all, we are blood brothers. Kun Wuzi looked at Li Yunxin as if he was looking at an idiot. You are a demon who has taken over my body. Do you really think that you are dragons? Li Yunxin looked at him blankly. What body taking over? This matter sounds. Why can't I remember? Kun Wuzi's expression changed instantly. His body flashed and appeared in front of Li Yunxin. He grabbed his hand and shouted, You can't remember? Body taking over. He shouted, You were originally a human, but you schemed to take over Qi Wen's body. Before that, he was called the 9th Young Master, also a great demon. What did you say? Li Yunxin frowned as if he was thinking about what Kun Wuzi said and some things in the past. But in just a few sentences, his frown disappeared. Looking at Kun Wuzi now, it seemed that he was even more unreasonable. What ninth young master? My name is Li Yunxin Wen, one of the 9 sons of the Dragon Emperor. He forcefully shook off Kun Wuzi's hand. The body of a profound state Taoist was strong, so it was not easy to get rid of him. But now, Kun Wuzi looked at him in disbelief. He even forgot to use his strength and let Li Yunxin get rid of his hand. Li Yunxin retreated a few steps, then frowned and looked at him. Then who do you think it should be? But no matter who it is, don't have any ideas about the dragons. Kun Wuzi stared at him for a while, then said in a low voice, you took over his body. He didn't say anything else and only looked at Li Yunxin. Seeing that Li Yunxin waited for a while, he impatiently sighed, I still have a lot of things to deal with. It's fine if you don't want to talk about it, I'll leave first. At this moment, Kun Wuzi finally confirmed that the same strange and terrifying situation had also appeared on Li Yunxin. Because of some terrifying power or law, he also lost his sensitivity towards any topic related to body taking. He also ignored it. The profound state Taoist felt a chill on his back, because of those things that he didn't understand, or rather, the power that he didn't understand. There was only one thing he was afraid of. Would he be in the same situation in the near future? This kind of indescribable fear made him reach out and try to grab Li Yunxin. Stop. But just as he finished speaking, he heard a low and powerful voice coming from the north, from the pile of broken bricks and tiles from the collapsed Sanheku Dragon King Temple. Someone wants to slander me? This is not a wise move. The slightly panicked expression on Kun Wuzi's face immediately faded. He took a deep breath and took a step back. That person walked out. He was tall and straight, wearing a yellow robe. It was silk and well cut, accentuating his strong back and thin waist. There was a sword hanging on his waist. This was relatively rare among cultivators. Dao Tong occasionally used a sword to defend himself, while Kenzo specialized in sword techniques. But the former usually kept his thin sword in his sleeve, while the latter usually carried it on his back. Only those who used the sword to show their status in the secular world would do this. But this person was obviously not a secular person, because his eyes were blue. Blue eyes were on a white face, but they did not seem feminine, because his face seemed to have been carved by a knife and axe, with sharp edges. This was a square face with thick eyebrows and big eyes. His black hair was tied with a golden silk crown. This was also not the style of a secular person, because in the secular world, people would only wear this thing after death. But perhaps the owner of the golden silk crown felt that this kind of dressing was more suitable for his yellow robe. He walked until he was 10 steps away from Kun Wuzi and stopped, looking at Li Yunxin first. And Li Yunxin also frowned slightly and looked at him. The two looked at each other for a while, and the yellow-robed man laughed heartily. What a good 9th brother. Second brother will remember your friendship just now. Li Yunxin was slightly stunned and then blinked his eyes. You? The yellow-robed man who called himself second brother then turned to Kun Wuzi and stopped laughing. You want to kill me? You have great ability. Now that I have returned to the profound realm, I really want to ask you, how should this matter be resolved? Chapter 198. Li Yunxin didn't know what had happened before. Kun Wuzi had chased hatred to this place. But he could already deduce what to return to the mysterious realm meant. Hatred was injured in Tongtian Swamp. He was afraid that Dao Tong would beat him when he was down, so he escaped separately with Emperor Li. He must have met Kun Wuzi again on the way, so he was chased by the head of Langya Cave all the way here. Previously he should have been at the peak of the true realm. Then he absorbed part of the resentment of the millions of ghost soldiers and returned to the mysterious realm. What he deduced was indeed the truth. This Kun Wuzi was also a Jinren who had achieved enlightenment in 100 years and had seen bloody battles. When he first saw hatred he was surprised, but he quickly recovered his calmness. He laughed and saluted. Lord Tongtan, what are you talking about? At first I was just itching to play with the Heavenly Lord. Now that Lord Tongtian has returned to the mysterious realm and we are brothers, I won't disturb you anymore. Now, how dare you? Hatred sneered. Li Yunxin knew that hatred's reputation wasn't good. People said he was cruel and tyrannical. But now that he saw him, he felt that at least he didn't seem to be the hatred in people's hearts. His appearance was very good. It made Li Yunxin want to make a joke like, you, with your thick eyebrows and big eyes, can be cruel and tyrannical. And even if he was sneering now, he still looked righteous. At least, he looked completely different from the evil charm of the 9th young master. Hatred sneered at this righteous Lord Tongtian and said, it won't be so easy for you to leave today. Although Ben Jun is a magnanimous person, I won't forgive just anyone. You ambushed me in Yi Kingdom and chased me all the way to Qing Kingdom. If I let you go, how can I frighten all the demons in the world? It's just that before you die, you still have a quarter of an hour to talk properly. What do you want to push the blame onto this monarch? Kun Wuxi smiled calmly and waved his sleeves. His body was immediately plated with a layer of misty golden light, and a faintly discernible image of the 8 trigrams appeared behind his head. In the 8 trigrams, the black and white fishes moved ceaselessly. For a moment, all the qi activity and spiritual energy within 10 steps around him were dispersed, turning into nothingness. Li Yunxin had never seen a profound realm Taoist priest serious attack, so he didn't know how powerful this move was. However, he still wisely flew back 20 feet, determined not to participate in today's battle if possible. After Kun Wuxi finished his technique, he said, "As for the matter." He thought for a moment, then looked at Li Yunxin and said in a deep voice, "This 9th brother of yours may not be your biological 9th brother. His real name was Li Yunxin and he was a human. He plotted to kill your 9th brother and took his body. I would like to remind the Lord Tong Tian that you might also be taken over by him. The body of a profound realm great demon is a good thing." After saying this, he looked at the reactions of Li Yunxin and the Lord Tong Tian. There was no reaction at all. The two of them were still staring at him, as if waiting for him to speak. Kun Wuxi felt the coldness on his back become even heavier. It was as if a huge invisible shadow was pressing down on him from behind, making him, a profound realm Taoist, feel uneasy. What kind of power could actually do this? Thinking about this, he didn't want to talk to the Lord Tong Tian anymore. His figure flashed and he wanted to escape into the sky. But he heard the Lord Tong Tian shout angrily, "You want to leave without saying a word? Do you really think you can leave?" When he said this, Kun Wuxi had already appeared 100 meters high in the sky. However, Long Sun's speed was obviously faster than him. The bright yellow figure on the ground flashed and blocked the direction where Kun Wuxi was going, slapping down with its palm. This Daotong cultivator didn't want to fight with him and he didn't want to fight with him. A profound realm Taoist against a profound realm Taoist, unless he was currently at the peak of the profound realm Taoist, once the fight started, it wouldn't be described as endless. The body of a true realm Taoist was already strong, and their souls were hard to destroy, let alone a profound realm Taoist. Kun Wuxi's figure immediately disappeared, and in the blink of an eye, he appeared in another place 100 meters away. However, the speed of the dragon's son, Hatred, was still faster than him. Once again, it turned into a stream of light and blocked his way, slapping down with its palm. In less than a breath's time, in the time that Li Yunxin blinked his eyes, the sky was already covered by a layer of misty water vapor, as if it was a cover made of white silk. Due to Long Sun's high-speed movement and the cone-shaped mist that was produced when he broke through the sound barrier, it connected and formed a cloud cover. In such a short period of time, Kun Wuxi had already been blocked by Hatred dozens of times. Even the most patient person wouldn't be able to endure this. After Kun Wuxi finally fought fiercely with Long Sun, he flew back to the ground and said angrily, "Can you stop by? Even if I fight with you for 3 days and 3 nights, so what? Do you think you are still at the peak of the profound realm?" Hatred stood majestically in the air and sneered again, "I can't stop you by myself, but I still have helpers. The two of us can stop you." Kun Wuxi looked at Li Yunxin and said, "Him? He's just a true realm Taoist, isn't he afraid of being smashed into pieces?" Hatred laughed heartily. He turned around and landed next to Li Yunxin. Then he touched his sleeve and took out a dagger that looked like a fong. Then he used the dagger to draw a circle beside Li Yunxin's feet. "Ninth brother, don't be afraid." Li Yunxin, the second brother with thick eyebrows and big eyes, said to him in a deep voice, "Just stand in this circle and it will protect you from being hurt by us. Just watch how I kill this stinky Taoist who is making things difficult for us. Then we can have a good talk about our brotherhood." However, Li Yunxin felt a little uneasy. He felt that his uneasiness came from his wrong estimation of Hatred. Hatred seemed to be completely different from what he had imagined. But, if he was a human he might believe that he was really like this. But he was a demon. Among the demons would there be such a character? From the beginning to the end, he had been trying to observe Hatred's subtle expressions. Although the information and details he obtained were not enough, if he had to come to a conclusion at this moment, it would be hard for him to believe Long Erzi Hatred was indeed such a person. Forthright, passionate and not bothered by trifles. What kind of demon was he? Li Yunxin took a deep breath and smiled, "Okay." When he spoke, his voice was frivolous and his tone rose, after you kill this stinky Taoist, I will tell you something more interesting. The two of them talked, leaving Kun Wuxia aside. The Taoist in the mysterious realm snorted, "Protect him? You animal, you don't know how deep and terrible this kid's schemes are. If I were you, I would kill him right now, otherwise you will regret it one day." Hatred still ignored him. He walked a dozen steps to the left, stepped on the messy ground and walked to the Dongting Lake. Then he turned around and looked at Kun Wuxia. "Stinky Taoist, you should have seen the helper I am looking for just now. I am now in the mysterious realm of Shi, so I can't kill you. But if I have a helper in the mysterious realm, things will be different." The old guy in the lake was already in the mysterious realm of Shi 1,000 years ago. Now, I don't know what level he has reached, but it is said that he likes to eat humans' essence and yang qi. After 1,000 years of accumulation, he is probably not much inferior to you. Ben Jun's other helper is him. Don't you know that Lord Dongting has been imprisoned in the Dongting Lake for 2,000 years, and he can't go more than 10 feet away from the lake? Kun Wuxia looked at him with a gloomy face. "How can you ask him to help you? Let's not talk about whether you can ask him to come out or not. Even if he comes out, I think that old guy doesn't want to get involved in this matter. Being an enemy of I means being an enemy of Daotong. Do you know what it means to kill I at this time?" Hatred stopped laughing. He stared at Kun Wuxia for a while and shook his head. The expression on his face seemed to be sarcasm and sympathy. "It is said that human cultivators are always smarter than demons, but I don't think so. You know that Lord Dongting is imprisoned in this lake, and he also knows that he is imprisoned. The whole world knows this. But it has been so long, 2,000 years. Why doesn't anyone think about why he is imprisoned? Your lifespan is short, only a few hundred years. The two old fellows on your mountain have lived for thousands of years. They should know the truth, but they didn't tell you. Since they don't want to talk about it, you shouldn't think about it or ask about it. Hey humans aren't bad. It's just this kind of muddle-headed little thing. Dizzy. I'm used to it." Hatred paused and pointed at Dongting Lake. "Today I will tell you why this old thing is trapped here." The moment he said this, Li Yunxin and Kun Wuxia were stunned. Did Hatred know this secret? However, the profound realm Taoist priest knew that Long Erzi's words were indeed true. The fact that a profound realm great demon had been imprisoned sounded unimaginable. But it was also because this matter had been, for far too long. Soon, the short-lived humans were no longer surprised by it. When human practitioners learned Taoism, they would always learn some common knowledge about some great demons in the world. There would also be seniors who told them what realm a certain demon was in and what kind of demon was like. For the practitioners who had just entered Taoism, every demon was not ordinary. After all, demons were not human, so it was normal for them to be eccentric. It was a strange thing that the Lord Dongting was imprisoned. But was it strange that no one had found the nest of the golden-winged rock? And so on, it became common knowledge. Imprisoned, this was the label of the Lord Dongting, and it had almost become a part of him. Some people were curious and asked why the Lord Dongting was imprisoned. However, the two saints knew about this ancient secret but didn't say anything. How could they find out the truth? So no one was curious anymore. Until this moment. Kun Wuxia was stunned and said in a deep voice, "You are talking nonsense." Hatred snorted with a smile and turned to the 1,000-mile Dongting that had been turned upside down not long ago. His voice was like muffled thunder. "Lord Dongting, today is your time. If you want to leave this place, come out and see me quickly." Previously, Li Yunxin and Kun Wuxia called him, but they hadn't seen him for a long time. But today, when this Hatred called him, a tall water column suddenly shot out from the lake. Lord Dongting, who was in red, appeared on the water column in the blink of an eye. He looked down and saw Hatred. Then he plunged over and rushed to the front of Hatred with clouds and mist. He said, "Are you serious?" Li Yunxin and Kun Wuxia were really stunned at this moment. Hatred seemed to be telling the truth. He seemed to have an agreement with the Lord Dongting. Hatred smiled and turned to look at Kun Wuxia. "Of course it's true. It's also a coincidence that you have suffered enough today. It's also a coincidence that when I wanted to release you from this sea of bitterness, I was stopped by this stinky Taoist. Otherwise you would have been released earlier. But since it's such a coincidence, help me kill this stinky Taoist." Kun Wuxia already knew that what Hatred said just now was not a lie. At this moment he didn't have the time to think about why Hatred could release this Lord Dongting. Instead, he clearly knew that once Lord Dongting was released he would really help that demon, and he would be in real danger. So he said in a deep voice, "Emperor Li has committed a great sin in Li Kingdom. I, Daotong, haven't questioned the demon about that matter. And the reason why I chased you all the way is also because of that matter. There is one more Shen realm demon in the world, but Dao Tong lost 5 Jinren. Therefore, Dao Tong needs an explanation and also needs balance. He looked at hatred, then looked at Li Yunxin. Today there is one more true realm demon in the world. It's in the city of Wei. Dao Tong and Kenzo still don't know about this. But once they know, there will inevitably be another wave. Fortunately, I have talked to your 9th brother and promised him something. I will go back to Dao Tong and think of some ways. Maybe there is still room for us to change this matter. But if I die here today, we will lose one more true realm and one more Shen realm. Kun Wuzi looked at hatred seriously. Dao Tong, Kenzo, and the demon will no longer be able to live in peace. It will be a catastrophe like the one that wiped out the painting devil 1,000 years ago, or even worse. You have to think about it carefully. If you kill I today, it will be a declaration of war against Dao Tong and Kenzo. It will be an all-out war until one side is completely destroyed. You demons, do you think you can withstand a full blow from us? After saying these words, he looked at the 3 people in front of him coldly. There was a moment of silence. Hatred turned to look at Lord Dongting, then at Li Yunxin and laughed. This stinky Taoist is afraid. But I'm not afraid. Dragon Sun sneered. War? That's what I want. Lord Dongting, will you help me? But he didn't get a firm and quick response as he had imagined. Lord Dongting reached out his hand to stroke his beard. It seemed that what Kun Wuzi said just now calmed him down a little. These things. This 3,000-year-old Shen realm monster said slowly, if I kill him and Dao Tong comes to attack, my cave well is still in Dongting after all. At that time, if Lord Tongtian escapes, it will be difficult for me. Kun Wuzi smiled. Yes. Lord Dongting's idea is a mature one, not just based on his own will. Even if he escapes, what's the point if he loses his life? Chapter 199. Your cave. Hatred seems to hear something funny. You have been imprisoned here for 2,000 years. Do you still want to stay in your cave? He reached into his sleeves and tossed something into the air. Look what this is. Lord Dongting can't get out of Dongting, but others can come in. What hatred throws out is a small plate. It's golden in color, it doesn't look regular. The plate falls into his hand. Li Yunxin, Lord Dongting, and Kun Wuzi all focus on the plate. But it's more like a fragment than a plate. It was like a small fragment that had fallen from a very thick and very large piece of glass. It had not been specially sculpted. It's half the size of a palm, thick on one side and thin on the other, and the edge is circular. Golden. Brilliant golden. This plate doesn't emit light, but it seems to absorb light. It absorbs all the brilliant gold in the world, making it so bright that it can't be ignored. It's not dazzling. Li Yunxin doesn't know the origin of this thing, but Kun Wuzi and Lord Dongting look at hatred at the same time. Lord Dongting's calmness disappears. He stares with his round eyes and says with a trembling voice, This is it? Yes. Hatred nods solemnly. Dragon God token. With this token, you can go anywhere in the world without hindrance. You can go wherever you want, no one dares to stop you. Hatred looks at Lord Dongting deeply. I know you have a place you want to go. Then cave? What's the use of it for you? Go anywhere without hindrance? It's just a joke. Kun Wuzi snorts immediately. Not everyone will buy this thing. Do you think you are going to see Shinryu? If Shinryu didn't appear in the world, how many demons in the world would really respect you for this broken scale? Even though you're a profound realm spirit demon, it's exactly because you're a profound realm spirit demon that no one dares to let you pass through them. However, Lord Dongting didn't seem to care about Kun Wuzi's words. He stretched out his hand and rubbed the dragon scale for a while, ignoring Kun Wuzi's words. Kun Wuzi didn't say anything because he saw the person beside the Lord Dongting. Dense water vapor was produced, almost covering his entire body. Li Yunxin blinked. He had seen this before, when he told the Lord Dongting about Qi Wen's death. After a quarter of an hour, the mist dissipated. Lord Dongting stood up straight. He had already put away the Dragon God token. He looked at hatred and his voice became calm and steady. How to break the seal? What do you need me to do? After hearing this, Kun Wuzi didn't say another word and flew away. This time it was different from before. The yin-yang fish 8 trigrams that kept rotating behind him suddenly broke into pieces and turned into a gray streamer. This streamer wrapped his body, and he disappeared into the horizon in the blink of an eye like a gray sharp arrow at a speed far faster than before. And hatred only had time to raise his hand and sprinkle a golden light. But the golden light was immediately penetrated by Kuan Wuxi, and it was only stained with some starlight. This dragon son sneered, "Stinky Taoist, you really cherished your life. Is that his magic weapon?" "Natal magic weapon," Lord Dongting said in a deep voice. "If he broke this magic weapon and ran away by absorbing the Reiki, you indeed couldn't catch up with him. But it would also damage his cultivation. He wouldn't fall, but he would be easier to deal with than before. He has already escaped. What a pity. It's such a good opportunity." But Lord Dongting smiled. "Escaped? Where can he escape to? My lifespan is 3,000 years. If he wants to, he can't escape from this Dongting. What do you think this is?" Lord Dongting turned over his palm, and a small mirror appeared in his palm. It was neither gold nor wood, and it didn't have a regular shape. The surface of this small mirror was blurry and seemed to be covered with a layer of water vapor. It didn't look clear and smooth, and there were some black spots on the surface. And the shape of this mirror, Li Yunxin looked at it for a while and realized what it looked like. Like this Dongting lake. The next moment he realized that he guessed right. Lord Dongting shook his hand, and the mirror flew into the air. It grew with the wind, and it expanded 5 or 6 times. At this time it could be seen clearly that this was indeed a miniature Dongting lake. The islands and hills in the lake were the black spots before. The layer of water vapor on the surface of the mirror was indeed the water vapor of Dongting Lake. And by the side of this small lake, there was an extremely tiny black dot flying about. The reason why he could see it was because there was a long gray shadow behind the black spot. It was Kuan Wuxi. "You have such a treasure?" Hatred looked at the mirror with great interest and pointed at it. "You couldn't get out of Dongting for 2,000 years. Where did you get this thing?" "It's an old thing, an old thing." Lord Dongting didn't answer, but just muttered to himself with emotion. Li Yunxin found that his eyes were full of complex emotions when he looked at this small mirror. He had seen a lot of demons since he came to this world. But Lord Dongting was the first one who had such complex emotions in his eyes. Even he couldn't describe it in detail. "The name of this treasure is Smoke Wave Dongting Painting." Lord Dongting's tone became the same as when Li Yunxin first met him, calm and unhurried. It seemed that once this Smoke Wave Dongting painting appeared, the whole world was under his control. Or maybe this treasure reminded him of something. Li Yunxin knew that people who were immersed in the past always had more calmness and sadness. With this painting, no matter how far he escaped, Lord Dongting said. He reached out a finger and inserted it into the mirror. It was really like inserting into the water. His whole finger went into the mirror. "He will be pulled back." As soon as he finished speaking, he stirred the water with his finger. A water column as thick as a chopstick suddenly sprang up from the small lake. It caught up with the little black spot in the air in the blink of an eye. At the same time, a deafening sound rang again. From the Dongting lake behind him, a huge water column that connects the sky and the earth rises up like a wall. However, the water column didn't rush out of Dongting obliquely. Instead, it went straight into the sky. However, somewhere in the sky, it disappeared inexplicably. It seemed that there was a cross-section there. The little black spot in the Smoke Wave Dongting painting was wrapped by the water column and pulled back slowly. As for Kuan Wuxi in the real world, although Li Yunxin couldn't see it, he knew that it was probably the same situation. Seeing this scene, Hatred let out a low voice of admiration. He pointed at the vivid painting. This is Lingtu." Lord Dongting sighed. "This is my treasure." Hatred didn't know what kind of concept Lingtu was, so he just marveled at its magical changes. As for Kuan Wuxi, he should have heard of this thing, but it was hard to say whether he had seen it or not. Li Yunxin was the only one who truly understood what this represented. When Taoist Danqing of the painting school painted, he could make a treasure scroll in the transcendent realm. When he reached the peak of the transcendent realm, he could make a treasure scroll. That day in Xianghua building, he made a perverted eating painting as a joke, which was a treasure scroll. And Ling Kongzi's body was full of precious magic weapons. After seeing his treasure scroll, Ling Kongzi also treasured it seriously. After entering the real state, Taoist Danqing could make Lingtu. And the reason why Lingtu was called spirit was that it could interact with the real world through the painting. Was the 1,000 miles of river and mountains and rivers painting on his folding fan a Lingtu? Yes. Yunzi's soul was sealed in the painting, and he could also see Long Erzi and hatred coming here in the painting. Some things that happened in the real world could be reflected in the painting. But Lord Dongting's Lingtu Smoke Wave Dongting painting could do more things. It could already affect the real world. Just like just now, it entangled and pulled Yu Yunzi's soul clone, who had destroyed his natal Dharma treasure, back to the real world. This should be the work of Taoist Danqing of the mysterious realm. A mysterious realm, at least a mysterious realm Taoist Danqing made this link to, and it was taken by Lord Dongting. Li Yunxin realized that there should be some stories that he would be interested in. It said that Lord Dongting entangled Kuan Wuxi with this link to spell, and then he turned to look at hatred. So now how can I get out? At this time, it is completely dark. The sun finally sets on the other side of the mountain, but the moon is still hidden in the west. Kuan Wuxi turned Dongting upside down and poured a huge amount of lake water from the sky. The water vapor didn't disperse, making the moonlight hazy. In such a hazy light, Li Yunxin saw hatred and laughed. It's called a confinement, but it actually wants you to guard a big treasure. You have been guarding this Dongting for 2,000 years? Well, today is the time. Do you know who asked me to free you? Hatred smiled and showed his teeth, shining in the moonlight. For some reason, Li Yunxin suddenly felt nervous when he saw him like this. He remembered the ninth young master. He was now a big demon in the real realm, and the ninth young master was just at the peak of the transcendent realm. But he was the only one who had ever given her such pressing pressure. That was the pressure of life and death. At this moment, Li Yunxin saw his teeth and smile, and he thought of the ninth son of the dragon again. He inexplicably felt that the atmosphere was a bit weird, so he slightly clenched the folding fan in his hand. Lord Dongting didn't say anything, so hatred smiled and continued, "It is Shinryu. Shinryu, you have come to the world. Right now, the true dragon wants to see you, not to mention that once you're free, you don't have to give this cave to me. This young master. This monarch can then cultivate in peace and recover his cultivation level. Before you leave, you have to give that big treasure to me and I will continue to guard it. As for you, you can leave." Li Yunxin frowned. He didn't know if it was his illusion or he was nervous because he was between two big demons in the mysterious realm. He felt that the word "this young master" that Yizi accidentally said sounded very familiar. Chapter 200. Lord Dongting carefully looked at hatred in the hazy moonlight, pondered for a while and then said, "This is a big deal. So it was also that Shinryu who taught Lord Tongtian how to break this restriction?" "Yes." Hatred smiled and then looked at Li Yunxin. "Because of this, my ninth brother needs to help." He walked to Li Yunxin's side and looked at him. Hatred was smiling. Li Yunxin saw his smile clearly. During the day, Hatred's smile was sincere and bright. It wasn't just the feeling, even an expert like Li Yunxin couldn't see through it. After all, he was an expert who could see the subtle expressions of Kuan Wuxi. But now, looking at his smile, it had become very strange. It was a fake smile. A smile full of malice, a smile of impatience, a smile of cruelty and tyranny. At this moment, this smile was hanging on Hatred's face. He stared at Li Yunxin and didn't look at Lord Dongting. He said slowly, "This restriction can only be broken with the strength of two dragon sun. My ninth brother was in theft in the Wei River. No one would have thought that he was actually used as a key." Li Yunxin also looked at him. Then he reached out his hand and touched it. Earlier, Hatred used a dagger to draw a circle around him, to prevent him from being affected by the fight between profound realm cultivators. Now the circle worked. A golden light appeared with a buzzing sound as if it was a cylinder made of halos, and it stopped his hand from moving forward. Li Yunxin sighed, "Then, second brother, what should I do with this key? Why don't I know?" Lord Dongting looked at the two brothers talking, and then looked up at the sky. There was a speck of light in the northwest. Within the smoky ripple cave painting, Kuan Wuxi's body was still fighting against the water pillar, and his momentum was slow. There was still time. He stroked the two strands of beard by his lips and said, "Doesn't the Lord Tongtian know about this?" This Li Yunxin was not Chiwen. It was a Yin god who found a way to disguise himself as your ninth brother. As for your ninth brother, he is already dead. Hearing his words, Hatred immediately sneered, still staring at Li Yunxin. "Oh? Ninth brother, is this true?" It was a sad story. Although we, the nine dragons' son, are all dragons we have never met before. 2,000 years ago, second brother was in theft to the Tongtian Sea. 1,000 years ago, ninth brother was in theft to the Wei River. Second brother really can't tell if you're real or not. Or, Hatred came closer. If it wasn't for the light barrier, his forehead would almost touch Li Yunxin's. He stared at Li Yunxin's eyes and a pair of blue eyes seemed to be twinkling like stars. Or, what you said before was fake? The two of them stared at each other for a while. Li Yunxin suddenly took a step back and smiled. "Second brother, you must be joking. Ninth brother's feelings for you are deep. Yazi burst into laughter. After laughing for a while, he suddenly stopped. Then, ninth brother, your friendship in the end, will it kill second brother? For example, second brother wants to live, but that Kun Wuxia is chasing after him. Li Yunxin said in a low voice. While chasing he said, please stop. I just want to play with you. Stand still and let I poke 49 holes in your body. I promise I won't kill you. Second brother, will you kill him later or stand still and let him poke you? You know, maybe that Kun Wuxia is really just playing with me. Hatred was silent for a while and stepped back 2 steps. Okay. He looked at Li Yunxin. What a deep friendship. Then Lord Dongting, I will save you now. The method is very simple. The finishing stroke of your inhibition in Dongting is drawn with Dragon Qi. Now it will be destroyed with Dragon Qi. Such a little Dragon Qi, not too much, not too little. If there is a dragon at the peak of transcendent state here, he can refine his body. After breaking the eye of the circle, another dragon son can guide 2 streams of Dragon Qi out, and the inhibition will be broken. If there is a dragon in the real state, it will be even better. He looked at Lord Dongting with a sneer. If my ninth brother is real, it will be a plan to kill 2 birds with 1 stone for Lord Dongting. You and my ninth brother have been together in Weishui River and Dongting for 1,000 years. Although he isn't that dirty usually, I guess my ninth brother doesn't have any good thoughts in his heart. Who would like to have an old demon in the mysterious realm by his side? Lord Dongting doesn't like him. That's good. After killing him, Lord Dongting can go to Shinryu with the Dragon God token. I will be happy to stay here. Li Yunxin looked at Hatred calmly. Or, at least during the day he should be Hatred. Yama King seemed to be unclear about some things. Or he might be hiding it on purpose. The 9th young master is not completely dead. Li Yunxin was willing to believe his intuition, even if he didn't find any solid evidence to support it. Hatred, hatred at night, hatred after sunset. He was the former dragon son, Qi Wen, the 9th young master. After Hatred said these words, Li Yunxin showed his Dharmakaya without saying a word. A burst of green light flashed. Clouds and mist rose around him. Water vapor soaked his greenish-gray scales. A pair of red antlers stood on his forehead, and the branches were dotted with golden light. He showed up but still didn't say a word. He pursed his lips and stared at Lord Dongting with a pair of golden eyes. Gambling on something. Gambling on something he was not good at and couldn't even understand. Seeing his Dharmakaya that belonged to Qi Wen, Lord Dongting slowly widened his eyes, slightly opened his mouth and even wanted to raise his hand. But it was just a movement and he quickly put it down. Lord Dongting glanced at Hatred. Li Yunxin saw some light in his eyes. He said, I have a lot of things to tell you. Many things that you can't imagine or understand. When he said this, his face was covered by a thin layer of water vapor. It was not clear whether he was looking at Lord Dongting or Hatred. But no matter what they look like. No matter what they look like, their names, there's one thing that won't change. Humans have emotions and so do demons. This thing won't change. Even if they never talk about it. After saying this, he fell silent. Hatred also fell silent for a while. He stared at Li Yunxin as if trying to figure out the meaning of these words, or whether they were true or false. He believed these words, as if they were said to him. Lord Dongting, who was beside him, had the same thought. Thinking of the words Li Yunxin said when he first met Li Yunxin. That's why, he probably only told me. He's a proud person. Some feelings are hidden in the bottom of his heart. He might be afraid of being laughed at if he said it. However, there was only one time. He drank too much and said that in this way river, there was only one person that he wanted to be close to but couldn't. Lord Dongting, a 3,000-year-old profound realm demon. Not to mention wisdom, just the amount of danger he had experienced was probably more than all 3 of them combined. When he first met Li Yunxin, the things he did and the things he said to him, even now, it was impossible for him to completely believe that this Qi Wen in front of him was the Qi Wen from before. However, he couldn't completely believe it. He had 99% doubts in his heart. But he still had a little hope and hope. Li Yunxin just wanted to bet on that, something that he was not good at and didn't understand. And the reason why he dared to bet on this was that the 9th young master was indeed a demon who couldn't understand people. There was a subtle but common relationship between the 9th young master and Lord Dongting. It was this relationship and the powerful strength of Lord Dongting that allowed them to coexist peacefully for thousands of years. But now it had become a fatal loophole. Lord Dongting knew some things that the 9th young master didn't. And today this difference in information became the only straw in this desperate situation. Hatred, who might be the ninth young master at this moment, kept emphasizing that Li Yunxin was his ninth brother. After a few moments of silence, Hatred spoke first. Who knows? Ninth brother. Humans had stomachs and so did demons. If you don't dig out your heart, I won't be able to see it clearly. Lord Dongting, have you thought it through? I'm going to save you now. Chapter 201. In the dusk, Lord Dongting stares at Li Yunxin for a while. Then he waves his hand. You two are blood brothers. At the same time he glanced at the painting of Misty Dongting. The reason why I can live in peace for 3,000 years is because I am careful and cautious. Lord Tongtian is also an unparalleled demon. Now he comes to my Dongting and gives me the dragon token. It's real. Just says. Lord Tongtian wants to tell me that Shinryu appears in the world. He gives me this token and asks me to meet him. Well, Shinryu is the common lord of demons, so I can't disobey him. But Lord Tongtian says that when I leave, he will hand over Dongting to you. Such a big thing. I have to think about it. He sighs slowly. After all, it's hard to leave my homeland. Hatred doesn't seem to understand why Lord Dongting suddenly changes his mind. He squints at Lord Dongting for a while and then stares at Li Yunxin for a while. He sneers. What? Are you afraid that I set you up? Hey, you think too much. Because I don't know if Lord Tongtian is also a son of Shinryu. Lord Dongting narrows his eyes, his black eyes turn into two thin lines, and says with a smile, for example, I used to think that this Li Yunxin is disguised as Dragon's son. But now it turns out to be true. Now Lord Tongtian does have some dragon chi, but I don't know if it's a disguise. I don't need Lord Tongtian to show his real body or Dharmakaya. After all, I'm imprisoned in this Dongting lake. Maybe I can use this smoke wave map to do some small things, but if a profound realm demon is here in person, I won't be able to see through it. The old demon says, but in this Dongting lake, there is a treasure that can identify the real dragon chi. Lord Tongtan, why don't you put some wacken into the lake so that I can see if it's real? Yazi looked at him in confusion. He didn't know why this old thing was so excited just now, but now he was able to restrain himself. But he glances at the little black spot in the smoke wave painting. They have been talking for a quarter of an hour and the doppelganger of Kuan Wuxi is about to be pulled back. It would take a lot of effort to kill the soul clone of a practitioner who had reached the peak of the mystical realm, and Yazi didn't have the confidence to do it alone. Above the mystical realm, the difference between each stage was even greater. He is in the mysterious state of Shi. Today, if he doesn't have the confidence to persuade Lord Dongting, a big demon, to fight with him, even if it is just the spiritual incarnation of Kuan Wuxi, he has to avoid it. This is a rare opportunity. If he can injure Kuan Wuxi's real body, Kuan Wuxi won't chase after him. After all, cultivators are more rational and quick-witted than demons, which means they value their lives more. Because of such a good opportunity, Hatred sighs. Good, good, good. I know you are cautious, Lord Dongting. Tell me what to do. Kuan Wuxi's doppelganger is going to be caught. Lord Dongting smiled and said, it's also very easy to do. I'll go out. Once I step out of this restriction, the magic circle will be activated. At this time, Lord Tongtian will hit the restriction with his wacken. He must use all his strength, so that the wacken will be transmitted to the eye of the circle. My treasure is at the eye of the circle, and we will know whether Lord Tongtian is the son of Shinryu or not. Hatred frowns and thinks for a while, suspecting that this is a trap. But soon he shrugs and says, okay. I'll do as you say. Lord Dongting, please. As soon as he says this, Lord Dongting immediately takes a step out. As soon as he steps out, a layer of golden light shield appears in front of him. Countless tiny and complicated runes flowed on the light shield in front of him. Each rune emitted a dazzling light the moment it appeared, and then turned into spots of light. In just a breath's time, his body seemed to be surrounded by a layer of golden fog, tightly wrapping around him, and constantly pulling him back. Lord Dongting's robe is fluttering, and the silk cloak is flying. Even the two strands of beard on the side of his lips seem to be making a loud sound in the golden wind around him. He shouts again, and immediately 81 pieces of scale shields with bright red light fly out from his body, forcing the golden fog back a little. At this moment he roars, now! Dragon Son Hatred immediately waves his hands, and a stream of wacken is sent out, hitting the fog in front of Lord Dongting. However, when the wacken from the mysterious realm Big Demon touches the golden fog, it is like a clay ox entering the sea, not even a ripple can be caused. Lord Dongting frowns and shouts again, is that all you have? Kuan Wuxi is coming. Yazid's eyes widened as he looked at the painting of the misty ripple cave. After a glance, he immediately turns his head to look at the sky. Hundreds of meters in the sky, a figure wrapped in water vapor is rushing down. In his heart he was both anxious and angry. He shouted, "You old thing, why do you have to make trouble like this? Quickly help me kill that Kuan Wuxia." After he shouted, he really used all his strength. With a buzzing sound, the earth and rocks within 10 steps were all turned into powder. Then they were turned into a whole field of green light by the violent overflowing spiritual power. This mysterious realm big demon's all-out attack seems to tear time and space apart. Li Yunxin, who is only 3 steps away from him, can see that the light circle around him is about to fall from the impact, and it is about to break soon. Hatred stops his attack and shouts, "Can you do it?" In the golden fog, Lord Dongting laughs 3 times, "Yes, yes. You, a mysterious realm big demon, help me open such a gap. Why can't I do it?" Hearing his words, Hatred feels a little strange. But before he can figure it out, a small part of the golden fog in front of Lord Dongting suddenly dissipates. This 3,000-year-old big demon suddenly reaches out a hand and smashes the inhibition spell that Hatred previously set around Li Yunxin with lightning speed. He grabs one of Li Yunxin's arms. Then he pulls Li Yunxin into the golden fog. Then he waves his big sleeve and takes the smoke ripple cave garden painting floating in the air into his palm. He shouts, "The doppelganger of the Taoist has been brought here for Lord Tongton. Lord Tongton, please deal with him first. I'm leaving now." As he is speaking, he has already grabbed Li Yunxin's wrist and rushed to the center of the lake. By the time he finished speaking, the 2 of them had already submerged into the water. Hatred has no idea what happened. Looking at Kuan Wuxia who has just fallen, and then at Dongting Lake, he turns around and wants to chase after him. But he only runs 3 steps. With a buzz, he actually bumps into the light circle that trapped Lord Dongting just now. Hatred growls in exasperation and finds another direction to rush into the lake. But after trying several times, he realizes that this Dongting Lake, it had actually been sealed. Chapter 202. The demon has no clue, he can't even think of a reasonable reason. How did things become like this? What went wrong? But there are only 2 seconds left for him to think. The doppelganger of Kuan Wuxia is finally pulled back. No, it should be said that it is seized back. Previously he thought that the power of Lord Dongting's smoke wave Dongting painting was limited. It takes a lot of effort to pull the doppelganger of Kuan Wuxia back. But when Lord Dongting pulls Li Yunxin into the water, the doppelganger of the Taoist of the mysterious realm is almost pulled from the sky to the ground in an instant. Lord Dongting deliberately held back and stalled for time. But why did he do that? Hatred can't figure it out at all. The doppelganger of the Taoist's soul falls to the ground. Looking at the Dongting in the distance and then at Hatred, it sneers, "Good, good, good. I want to go, but you don't want I to go. Since that old thing doesn't want to help you, then I will help you." Hatred is silent for a while, and then he says with hatred, "You? Take my palm." As soon as he finishes his words, the big demon of the mysterious realm immediately rushes up to the sky. It is his turn to escape. 2 flowers bloom, 1 on each side. While the Taoist of the mysterious realm and the demon are chasing, Li Yunxin is pulled into the lake by Lord Dongting. It is the first time for him to go into the water since he came to this world, to immerse himself in the water. Although there is no water-repelling spell or water-repelling bead, he doesn't need to worry about getting his clothes wet. After all, he is also a yin spirit. Usually he can hide his body and pass through walls. At this time, it is not a problem for him to hide in the water. He has returned to his human form. But his face is blue and his mouth is tightly closed. He doesn't say a word. Ordinary people will say that he is guilty and afraid when they see him like this. But Lord Dongting doesn't see it like this. In fact, after entering the water, Lord Dongting let go of him and just silently goes straight to the bottom of the lake. Without any hesitation, Li Yunxin follows him with a blue face. This was not a wonderful feeling. The lake was deep and it wasn't clear seawater with a sunny white beach. Moreover, it was nighttime. When he was a few meters into the water, the moonlight had already disappeared, and his body seemed to be wrapped in the deepest darkness. Below him was an even deeper darkness. He did not know what was hidden there, nor did he know how deep it was. The only light came from the Lord Dongting and himself. There are almost no fish in the water, but there is a layer of dead fish floating on the water. Kun Wuxia cast spells to overturn Dongting, but he also killed a lot of people. Just like that, he dove down for an entire breath's worth of time. Only then did Lord Dongting slow down and turn to look at Li Yunxin. It was a Dharmakaya that looked like a tall and fat man with the head of a carp. So you're the one who saw me back then? Lord Dongting opened and closed his wide mouth. His voice was a little distorted in the water, and it was mixed with the rumbling background sound from somewhere in the lake. At that time, my shrimp soldiers disguised as boatmen and took you and 3 people from Egret Town to Mount June. At that time he told me that you looked afraid of water. After that, I threw you and Song Yunzi down the mountain. You also found a boat to cross the lake. Later, my daughter took you to see Ling Kongzi and Muyun in a white jade boat. According to her, you also looked nervous and afraid, which is exactly what you look like now. So, you are afraid of water? You are already a shadow god in dragons. Why are you afraid? Lord Dongting's tone was calm as if he was chatting with a passerby who happened to meet him. But Li Yunxi knew that now he was almost in the palm of Lord Dongting. Dongting had been run by him for 3,000 years, and it was almost the body of this big demon. However, such a situation could be considered as having no choice, or premeditated. Dongting was right next to his bed. He had wanted to explore it for a long time. Today was a good opportunity, maybe. I'm afraid of water indeed. Otherwise I wouldn't be like this now. Li Yunxin said after a while. As for why I'm afraid, it's because I was drowned when I was alive. It was a terrible experience. I can't forget it and I don't want to forget it. Dragons who are afraid of water, I think I'm the first one. You are Li Yunxin dragons and Chiwen. Lord Dongting was silent for a while and whispered, so, where is the original Chiwen? Dead. Killed by you? I had to. Tell me. Lord Dongting slowed down a little more. It was completely dark around. But at the bottom of the lake, far away, there was a little light. It was a faint white light, as if there was a piece of glowing white moss at the bottom of the lake. But Li Yunxi knew that those seemingly small branches were not really small. It was because they were too far away. The depth of Dongting Lake, at least at this moment, was about 1,000 meters. And in his original world, the middle section of a big river named Yangtze River, the depth of navigation was only a few meters. Even some places were only 2 or 3 meters deep. In the depth of the 1,000-meter lake, Lord Dongting repeats again, tell me, then I'll think about it. I'll decide whether to take you to Red Flower City or to take your body to Red Flower City. Li Yunxin exhaled slowly. A series of tiny bubbles came out of her mouth and she rose up shakily. Then he smiled, I killed your son. You haven't killed me to avenge your son. Haven't you made a decision? After saying this, Lord Dongting suddenly stopped. His eyes emitted a terrible blue light in the lake, like 2 dazzling searchlights. His robe inlaid with red scales also fluttered in the water, which made him look like he was performing a play, but a horrible and bloody play. He would pounce on the person in front of him in the next moment and tear him into pieces. He breathed horribly, which could be heard clearly even in the depth of the lake. You know about it? Chiwen has a fish body and a dragon head. When I first met you, I said that the 9th young master couldn't forget you before he died, and you cried. Li Yunxin sighed. If you're not his father, are you his brother? How can it be? Li Yunxin floated in the water and looked at Lord Dongting. Yes. It's hard for people and demons in this world to associate a carp transformed into a demon with Dragon Sun's father. But I happen to know something else. In fact, it's not even a deduction. Maybe in another world, some things are far-fetched legends. But here it's a fact. I know the legends of another world, so I know the facts of this world. It sounds hard to understand, but... Li Yunxin sighed again, I'm sorry to kill your son. We were indeed friends at the beginning, at least he thought so. When I met him for the first time, Li Yunxin slowly told the story of him and the 9th young master under thousands of feet of water in Dongting. He skipped some things and processed some things. He didn't judge and only stated facts. Lord Dongting's mood was fluctuating because of many things. He also knew that Li Yunxin couldn't leave Dongting without his permission. He was already on the chopping block. That was why he had the patience to figure out everything in detail. So it's hard to say whether he was vigilant enough when listening to Li Yunxin's narration of those facts. It was like a middle-aged man holding a sharp knife in his hand while listening to a child in his own apartment. Was he or was he not vigilant enough? Therefore he didn't realize that Li Yunxin used some skills when talking. In fact, he had been using these skills before. Hatred thought that Li Yunxin was talking to him by the lake. In fact, every word and look of Li Yunxin was done for Lord Dongting. Just to plant a strong and sad but powerless seed in his heart. This seed would quickly take root and germinate, breaking the heart defense of an old father who lost his son. So, the current situation came. Lord Dongting suppressed the complex emotions in his heart and listened to Li Yunxin's many words. He might not be patient, but he must be patient. Because both he and Li Yunxin's hints told him that he must figure out the cause of his son's death. Your son is, in fact, thinking of you in silence. What Li Yunxin wants is the current situation. Give him enough time and a calm environment to talk to a 3,000-year-old monster who is not calm. For him, words are even more powerful than Taoism, as long as he has a chance. He repeats some words and intensifies some emotions. The deep water of Dongting is quiet and dark. It's the best hypnotic environment for him. He doesn't know how effective his best skills can be on this 3,000-year-old non-human monster, but he believes that it won't be in vain. Lord Dongting thinks this bottomless water is his domain. But he doesn't know that he also breaks into Li Yunxin's domain because of this environment. From the moment he suspected that Qi Wen was the son of Lord Dongting, Li Yunxin had been looking forward to such a favorable time and place like today. Now it finally comes to this step. In this 1 hour's time he used all the techniques he could use. In the end he sighed. This is the current situation. He doesn't speak. There is still a low background sound in the lake. It's the sound of the surging undercurrent in the lake. Lord Dongting is silent for a long time, and then he says, "If I ask you how you became Qi Wen, you won't answer me." Li Yunxin smiles helplessly. "I took over her body." Of course, Lord Dongting doesn't hear this sentence. He is silent for a while and then he says, "Follow me." Then he dives to the bottom of the lake. Li Yunxin breathes a sigh of relief. A bubble appears around him and then he follows Lord Dongting. This time it's faster. After another quarter of an hour, the thing he saw at the bottom of the lake like white moss quickly becomes bigger, and it becomes too big. When he first met Hong Yang, she said she lived in White Woods, Safflower City. At that time he thought that White Woods referred to some kind of white algae or water plants deep at the bottom of the lake. Now he sees it with his own eyes and he knows it's a real woods. Just like the towering trees on land, every tree in this White Woods is white. Most of them have symmetrical branches on the left and right sides, and there may be light-colored algae growing on the branches. The tallest one is 100 meters, and the shortest one is dozens of meters. When they get closer to this White Woods, Li Yunxin can feel how big it is. He can't see the end of it, just like a dense and wide forest on land. He estimates that in this White Woods, there are at least thousands of such trees. But in fact they are not trees. They are skeletons. Most of them are spines. Most of them are fish and only a few are terrestrial animals. Li Yunxin has seen Lord Dongting's unimaginably huge real body, but he is still shocked after seeing these spines. So many spines are inserted straight into the bottom of the lake. This is the White Woods. They are all defeated by me. Lord Dongting stops on a thick branch. This bone tree is more than 100 meters tall. It's not the shortest, but it's not the tallest either. The two of them are in human form. At this moment, they are standing on this spine as if they are standing on a wide bridge. It's hard to imagine what kind of existence the owner of this skeleton was when he was alive. In this White Woods, there are 4,667 trees, all of which are demons that have attained the Tao. Lord Dongting points at the tallest spine. This is a soaring dragon. When it was alive, its cultivation level was at the profound realm. It took me more than a month to kill it. Then he points at a shorter skeleton. This is a coiled dragon. He is cunning, but he is very beautiful. My daughter was almost charmed by him. Ben Jun also killed him, but this skeleton still looks beautiful now. Li Yunxin silently listens. Lord Dongting points at those skeletons and says with great familiarity. After talking about dozens of them, he turns around and looks at him, saying, "Even the weakest of these demons has the same cultivation level as you. In this world, there are only a few hundred demons that are above the true realm." Li Yunxin takes a deep breath, but only inhales the lake water. How can there be so many high-level demons? However, this is not what he really focuses on. But, you said, flood dragons. He looks at Lord Dongting. The dozens you just mentioned are all flood dragons. I saw that the dozens you pointed out and the thousands you pointed out all look the same. You mean, these thousands are all flood dragon bones? Lord Dongting smiles peacefully. Yes. Li Yunxin suddenly finds that he can't see through him. Not long ago, he thought that his words have worked on the other side, and he was waiting to reap the fruits of his victory. But at this moment he feels that things are getting out of his control. For the first time he feels uncertain. He exhales softly. How can there be so many of them? How can you kill so many of them? And, did you give them the name, Flood Dragon? Lord Dongting doesn't answer immediately, but looks at Li Yunxin with a strange and complicated expression, as if he wants to see through him. Then he says, "You have never heard of this word in the secular world, have you? And you have never heard of such a thing as flood dragon in this world, have you?" "That's right." Lord Dongting laughs, "because there is no such word as flood dragon in the secular world. Even if you write it down and ask the most knowledgeable scholar, they won't recognize it." "But you are interested in it? Li Yunxin, where have you heard of this word?" The atmosphere seems to have become subtle. Li Yunxin looks at Lord Dongting, and realizes that he has underestimated him again. At first he thinks that Lord Dongting is a demon that looks like a human but is a little slow. Later he realizes that Lord Dongting is not as slow as he looks. On the contrary, he is also a sophisticated person. He used to think that a demon with both strength and strategy is already amazing. This time, Lord Dongting really regards him as an opponent and tries his best to control everything. However, now he realizes that he seems to have underestimated Lord Dongting for the third time. He will not admit that Lord Dongting is smarter than him. But at least he knows that Lord Dongting is not inferior to him. He looks at the 3,000-year-old demon in front of him. How did Lord Dongting suddenly come up with this word? Come up with this word? Lord Dongting laughs. "I didn't come up with this word. It was another person who told me that something that looks like a dragon but has no horns is a flood dragon. If you see them, just kill them all. What do you think I have been doing in Dongting for 2,000 years? As for where these flood dragons come from and who told me that word, Li Yunxin, this is also the reason why I won't kill you." Lord Dongting stops laughing. His face became solemn, like a god in deep water. He opens his mouth and sighs first, saying, "You just played some tricks on me. Although I don't understand you and I can't see through you, I know you are bewitching people. In fact, it can't be called bewitching, it should be a more brilliant way. You killed this monarch's son and you want to rely on this method to make this monarch let you go? How dare you? If it wasn't for you guessing Ben Jun's intentions wrongly and getting the wrong direction from the beginning, perhaps things would have really succeeded by now. You are now Qi and my son used to be Qi. Maybe I love my son so much that I have some expectation in my heart when I see Qi. Knowing that my dead son can't be found, maybe I won't kill you and get some compensation. Oh, if ordinary people know what you are thinking, they will scold you for being whimsical. It's impossible. I also thought so by the lake, but after hearing what you just said, I almost fell into your trap. Now I'm just curious, what kind of trick is this? Thinking about it, it's not like a holy spell or a Taoist spell." At this time, Li Yunxin can finally be sure that everything he has done has been completely seen through. Would he be able to survive? Maybe he can only rely on his luck. But he doesn't feel panic or fear. On the contrary, he felt himself getting excited. A kind of excitement which he knows is sick but he can't control quickly occupies his body, making him want to have a good fight with this big monster in front of him, which is beyond his expectation. He wants to see, in this Dongting, how many secrets are hidden. He should have suppressed this kind of emotion like countless times before. Bai Yanjun said he was crazy and some people said he was crazy. But he didn't know that crazy in their eyes, it's his reason after suppressing it. It's the study of the mind. Li Yunxin finally laughed. This laughter sounds a little crazy. Because he realizes that he may have touched something he has been trying to grasp but couldn't grasp before. Now it appears in front of him. This makes him more excited. Chapter 203. Mind study, he repeated again and looked at Lord Dongting with a smile. You are absolutely right. I have guessed that your son is Qi. Now that I have also become Qi, I thought you would miss your son. I thought you would cry for him. You miss him and cry for him. Then how much you hate me, the enemy who killed your son, will be how much you miss your son who was killed. These two feelings are not completely opposite, there is a subtle boundary between them. So when I told you those things just now, I was trying to study it carefully. I kept hinting and guiding you. Step by step, I weakened the hatred in your heart and magnified the pity in your heart. In the end, you will be completely hypnotized by me. Your memory of your son will completely overwhelm your hatred for me, so you will treat me as a substitute for the ninth young master. In the end, not only will you spare my life, but you will also compensate me double. This is indeed something that seems to go against common sense and is unimaginable, but it's not impossible. There are more victims who fall in love with kidnappers. This is the same logic. This is the mind study. Li Yunxin laughed out loud. What a pity, my goal was wrong from the beginning. You're not crying for your son at all. Am I right? It does sound interesting. Lord Dongting lowered his eyes and stroked his beard. Yes, I'm not crying for him. So you don't really care about how I became Chi-Wen? Indeed I don't care, Lord Dongting said calmly. I also don't care about your mind study. You think I will be curious? Alas, you are just a child after all. You don't know many things, for example people. When a child sees his mother making a new dress with a thread and a piece of cloth, he will be curious and want to know how it was made. But when this child grows up and becomes a human, he will see more things. One day he will see a man performing a magic trick and spitting out a sword from his mouth. This thing is much more magical than his mother making clothes. But he will not be curious anymore. Because he has seen a lot, he knows that there are many strange things in this world that cannot be explored by human beings. After seeing so many strange things, they aren't strange anymore. That's why your schemes are useless against me. Lord Dongting narrowed his eyes and looked at the deep darkness at the bottom of the lake. I won't cry for him. He had been sealed in the Wei River for more than 1,000 years and had always regarded me as an enemy that he could not get rid of and was deeply afraid of. But Ben Jun doesn't have any feelings for him. Oh, in fact, I do. But it's not what you think. I'm crying because you saw a fan and thought of a woman and you tossed and turned restlessly. You cherish the fan and use it as a token of your affection, but how can it be the fan you love? That woman gave you a jade bottle back then. You also like jade bottles. Sigh. But one day the fan was destroyed and you shed tears. Tell me, are these tears shed for the fan or for the woman? Lord Dongting sighed and shook his head. Why do you think that I would shed tears over a fan? Li Yunxin was silent for a while, then laughed. Good. It's my fault. I didn't expect you to be so perverted, to use a child as a prop to miss the child's mother. But it's understandable. In the secular world, there are many people who think of a heartless person when they see a child, and then vent their anger on that child. You are all perverts. So, you are the Shinryu's son-in-law? Looking at the 9th young master, I think of Shinryu. Now the 9th young master is dead, but I'm still Chi-Wen, as long as I'm Chi-Wen. Looking at me, I can also think of Shinryu so he doesn't kill me. But, the dragon has 9 sons. Li Yunxin laughed. Don't you feel uncomfortable? There are probably 8 other son-in-laws like you, right? Lord Dongting stared at Li Yunxin for a while and sneered. You are not afraid of death. But what do you know? You've been wrong once and now you're wrong for the second time. Why don't you think about why I brought you to Dongting? Maybe you really want to leave but you need someone to look after the house. There must be something important in Dongting Lake. Maybe it's because of that thing that made these things. Li Yunxin raised his hand and pointed at the white woods in front of him. Now that things have come to this point, Lord Dongting, tell me your conditions. I'm not in a good situation now, so I may be willing to help you. These words sounded arrogant. But Lord Dongting didn't sneer. Instead, he seriously pondered for a while before suddenly raising his head to look towards the deep lake to the west. After looking for a while, he said, It's not safe to stay here for a long time. Let's go to Safflower City to talk about those things. After saying that, he ignored Li Yunxin and flew into the skeleton forest. Li Yunxin followed him without hesitation. He thought the white woods were white water plants and algae. But it turned out to be a forest of flood dragon bones. So he began to think, what would this Safflower City look like? He remembered that he once saw Ling Kongzi Muyun. This Lord Dongting was a man-eater. Then, the white woods were the bone woods. Safflower City? Was it a city of flesh and blood? He followed Lord Dongting around the white woods and went straight into the depths. Probably because those bones used to belong to higher demons, they were still emitting white light even though they had been at the bottom of the lake for so many years. This made the light in the woods soft and bright. Even Li Yunxin felt like he was in the elves' jungle. In such a light, Lord Dongting stopped in front of a spine dozens of meters high. This spine was inconspicuous in the woods, and its surface was covered with a layer of light green algae. The big demon whispered, "Here we are." Li Yunxin took a closer look at the front. However, he saw nothing. He frowned slightly and grunted in a low voice. He was ready to deal with any possible traps and attacks. But the next moment, Lord Dongting moved to the other side. So Li Yunxin saw a red flower. It was really just an ordinary red flower. It was the kind of small red flower that you could see growing in the wild grass in spring, summer, or autumn. It had 5, 6, or 7 or 8 petals. It had a yellow stamen and 1 or 2 petals were slightly broken. Such a red flower, the size of a thumb, was timidly attached to a piece of algae and placed in a gap of the thick spine. If not for Li Yunxin's good eyesight, if not for Lord Dongting looking in that direction, he would never have found this thing. This is Safflower City. A strange smile appeared on Lord Dongting's face. It was a smile that only people who were immersed in a happy past would have. It is also my palace. Li Yunxin realized that the palace he was referring to was the Dragon Palace of Dragons. Fiendish demons that were worshipped would give birth to their own spatial palace. If they were powerful dragons, they would have a dragon palace. This Lord Dongting was not a dragon, so he called it a palace. The original palace would take on different forms depending on the wishes of the fiendish demons. Li Yunxin did not know what the ninth young master's former palace looked like, but his palace was inside his folding fan. Now that he had become a great demon at the True Realm, his palace should have become a dragon palace. He was known as the Wei River Dragon King, and now he had his own palace. However, the folding fan did not seem to have changed. Li Yunxin did not know what the dragon palace, that he had upgraded from a palace to a dragon palace. Because no one had taught him this. He could put many things into the folding fan, but he had never thought of trying to run in himself. He was more worried that something would happen if he went in, and he would not be able to come out. It would be so embarrassing. And this red flower in front of him, was it Red Flower City? Red Lady's ghost wedding was quite grand, with dozens of prawn soldiers and crab generals accompanying her. So many fiendish demons, were they all living in such a small red flower in Red Flower City? He looked at it in a daze. Lord Dongting smiles faintly, so you didn't check your palace carefully? And now that it is called a dragon palace, it should be a big change. You are an interesting person. Afraid of water, but you became dragons. You dare to seek death in front of me, but don't dare to look at your little thing. You're interesting too. That's a great demon, but he made such a thing that women like. Lord Dongting was not angry. As if he did not hear the mockery in Li Yunxin's words, he leaned forward and touched the flower petal. When I was a red carp, there was a woman in a shallow stream, who plucked a red flower and threw it to my side. And I sensed this, so I became intelligent. He turned around and looked at Li Yunxin with a smile. Do you know who that woman was? Li Yunxin smiled. A Shinryu in human form? Lord Dongting snorted and laughed. There are too many things you don't know, and you will know them sooner or later. If you can leave my Red Flower City tomorrow, I will tell you. Come with me. After saying this, Lord Dongting pounced on the red flower, and his huge body immediately disappeared. Only Li Yunxin was left floating in front of the red flower, surrounded by the deep lake water. At this time he could escape far away. But when he looked at the bone forest around him, he gave up the idea. Profound Realm Hatred wanted to kill Profound Realm Kun Wuxia, but he had to go through a lot of trouble and ask Lord Dongting to help him. It was not easy for a Profound Realm cultivator to kill a Profound Realm cultivator. The dead Emperor of the Li Kingdom killed 2 Profound Realm and 3 True Realm cultivators, but he didn't kill them all. One of them came back with his Ocean of Qi and Mountain of Snow destroyed. But here, each of these 4,000 skeletons represented a great demon above the True Realm, and there were countless Profound Realm cultivators, right? It was probably more than all the Profound Realm cultivators in the whole of Daotong combined. Lord Dongting had been imprisoned here for 2,000 years. On average, he had killed 2 True Realm and Profound Realm Flood Dragons every year. But he had survived until now. Li Yunxin realized that the impression she had of him in the past and everyone's estimation of his strength and realm might have been wrong. The reason why he was speaking to her so calmly was probably because he had absolute confidence in himself. In front of such confidence, he couldn't run away. That would be a stupid and cowardly choice. Lord Dongting didn't say how to enter the Red Flower City, but it shouldn't be difficult. Li Yunxin tried to sense it with Wacken, and he easily found a small vortex. It was like a vortex made of Wacken or a disorder of time and space. It was a familiar feeling. He did the same and put other things into his summer palace. He didn't hesitate anymore. He frowned and rushed forward. There was no darkness or possible discomfort as he imagined. One moment he rushed forward with a frown, and the next moment he was no longer in Dongting Lake. What the hell is Lord Dongting doing? He was still in Dongting. However, he was not at the bottom of the lake, nor around Dongting, which was destroyed by Kun Wuxia today. Instead, he was in Dongting where the sun was shining and the grass was long and the orioles were flying. The reason why Li Yunxin knew it was Dongting was that he was standing on an island. This island looked familiar. He had a good memory. He glanced around and realized it might be Mount June. The real Mount June Island was a big island with a mountain hundreds of meters high. But this Mount June Island was small and low. The real Mount June was not far from the shore. People could cross it with a small boat. But now this Mount June was far away from the shore on the other side. It was almost in the middle of the lake. Li Yunxin realized that this seemed to be what Dongting looked like a long time ago. A long time ago the silt brought by the Weishui River was not so much, and the bottom of the lake was not so silted. The area of Dongting should be larger. Just like now, the tall and beautiful Mount June in his later life was just a small island, and Dongting was wider and more vast. Looking around, there were curling clouds where the water and the sky met. According to the vast area of this world, this lake may be larger than a sea in his world. In the palace of Lord Dongting, there was such a vast world hidden. He stood on Mount June and found that there was no one around. Looking up at the shore, he only saw lush vegetation. It should be the end of spring and the beginning of summer in this world, and the flowers were in full bloom. The green on the distant shore was dotted with colorful colors. And then, he thought he saw smoke. He didn't hesitate anymore. Frowning slightly, he looked at the lake in front of him and flew to the shore. The scene on the shore soon became clear in his field of vision. Li Yunxin saw where the smoke came from. There was a shallow stream behind the flowers and plants on the shore. The stream made a turn when it was about to flow into Dongting. It circled a shoal covered with pebbles and grass. There was a moonlight tree by the shoal. It was the same size as the moonlight tree that Lu Laodao used to see at the gate of the Dragon King Temple. Just like the first day Li Yunxin came to the city of Wei, this moonlight tree was covered with tiny flowers. Small pink petals covered the green grass, which looked beautiful and dreamy, but one person spoiled the scene. Lord Dongting, who had a tall dharmakaya and a fish head, was wearing a peasant's shorts. He sat under the moonlight tree and made a bonfire. Without the big red robe he looked a little funny now. The bonfire didn't seem to be made by magic. It was wet wood and there was black smoke in the fire. A woman in yellow sat on the other side of the bonfire. She was not beautiful, but she was young and delicate. She looked a little numb, sitting on her knees. She looked at the shallow stream with a red flower in her hand. And Lord Dongting was roasting a fish. Chapter 204. Seeing Li Yunxin coming over and standing down, he doesn't even look up. He just says, "Sit down." Li Yunxin doesn't know what he is doing. He just takes a careful look at the fish pierced on the branch by Lord Dongting. It's a waste, a good red carp, but it seems that the fish's internal organs are not removed. It's pierced from the mouth to the tail with a branch and roasted on the fire. It's not cooked and it doesn't smell good. It was more like something that a rich young lady, who had never been involved in worldly affairs, came up with when she was in the mood for a rare occasion. However, it's strange that a carp spirit roasts a carp. Li Yunxin doesn't think Lord Dongting will do this for no reason, so he also kneels down in front of the woman in yellow without saying a word. The woman doesn't have any obvious reaction. She is still silent. After sitting like this for a while, Lord Dongting turns over the fish on the fire. Staring at the fish, he says, "The Dongting in my palace is what the Dongting outside looked like 3,000 years ago. More than 3,000 years ago I was a red carp just like this." He looks at Li Yunxin. "I was swimming in this shallow water." The woman was wearing light yellow clothes. She held a red flower in her hand and lit a fire under the tree. She was so hungry that she wanted to catch a fish and roast it. When she saw me, "This woman? Who is that woman?" Li Yunxin glances at the woman in yellow opposite him. There is nothing special about her. The most reasonable inference may be that Lord Dongting abducts her and places her here as a plaything. "Who is she?" Lord Dongting laughs. "Of course you know her. I don't kill you partly because of her. Alas, things in the world are changeable. Fate is also changeable. Do you think it's a blessing or a misfortune?" That woman was just a little Taoist who just started to cultivate Taoism more than 3,000 years ago. She knew a little Taoist, but she didn't have any supernatural power. She looked embarrassed at that time. In this world there were countless human cultivators. In the end, so many people failed to cultivate the great Tao and died. Even if a profound realm cultivator's Taoist magic was extremely powerful, how much lifespan did he have? 1,000 years was considered a long time. Ascending to immortalization in 600 to 700 years is not considered a short life. But she has only lived for 3,000 years. Li Yunxin was silent for a while, then slowly exhaled. "Calligrapher or sword saint?" "Don't worry." Lord Dongting waved his hand. The smell of the fish was finally getting better. But this woman later married another man. The man she married was also a man of striking appearance. They have a son. Logically speaking, according to the human cultivators, this child was a Tao child. However, he did not like to cultivate. He did not love cultivation, but he loved the prosperity of the world. At that time, Dongting was surrounded by water and there was no emperor. It was called Nans. Back then this place was called the 100 Kingdoms of Nans, Li Yunxin said. The first time he went to see Lord Dongting, he tricked shopkeeper Ding, Officer Zhao, and Officer Sun of Egret Town into bringing him there. When the three of them talked about the name Lord Dongting on the boat, they also mentioned the history of the Qin Kingdom. He used to think that it was unofficial history and couldn't be true. Unexpectedly, it was confirmed by Lord Dongting today. When I went to Mount Jun to see you, I heard on the boat that 2,000 to 3,000 years ago, Lord Dongting helped the king of the Wei Kingdom to unify the 100 Kingdoms of Nans, which was the beginning of today's Qin Kingdom. Is it true? Wow. I didn't expect someone would remember this. Lord Dongting sounds a little happier. He moved closer to the fish and smelled it, then continued to roast it on the fire. Yes. At that time, 2,900 years ago? At that time I was still in the transcendent state. But it was enough for me to help people. The ancestor of the Wei Kingdom's royal family was the Taoist that the yellow-clothed woman gave birth to. He came to the secular world, married and had 10 generations. In the 10th generation the Wei Kingdom's royal family came out. Lord Dongting laughed. They originally lived and multiplied in Guangzhou for generations, and later became emperor in Guangzhou. At that time, the royal family's surname was different from that of the common people. It was a compound surname to show respect. Since they became emperor in Guangzhou, their surname was Shangguan. Nowadays, those compound surnames among the people are, in fact, legitimate descendants of the ancient royal family. Li Yunxin frowned slightly. You adored her. Because you loved her, you helped her descendants establish the Wei Kingdom? Lord Dongting narrowed his eyes and let out a long sigh. At that time I still knew about it. However, these things could only be used to pass the time for boredom. But there is another matter. The Wei Kingdom had a total of 746 years. Later I got tired of it and cut off this relationship. But after the Wei Kingdom was destroyed, a branch of the Shangguan family remained. After another 97 generations, a little girl was born. Lord Dongting looked at Li Yunxin. That little girl was a Dao embryo. She was seen by the Kenzo and was brought to cultivate the Dao. She reached the transcendent state in her 20s, and was on par with Ling Kongzi. It was said that she was beautiful, and when the Kenzo investigated, she turned out to be a descendant of the Sword Saint. Li Yunxin took a deep breath. So, the girl you met by the stream is the Sword Saint now. Lord Dongting chuckled. That's a small matter. Instead, it was said that the genius of the Sword Sect had met a man. That man. Hey, he's a remnant of the Art Saint. Who knew that the remnant of the Art Saint would fall in love with the girl, causing her to betray the Kenzo and elope with him. The man's surname is Li and his name is Chunfeng. As for the girl, her surname is Shangguan and her name is Yu. Li Yunxin was silent, and his face was solemn. After a while he chuckled. So, I'm a relative of the two sages? The Sword Saint's husband, is the calligraphy saint now? I've never heard of this before. Relative? Lord Dongting laughed. Not a relative, but you are the only descendant of the two sages now. As for the two sages, of course no one told you. They turned against each other more than 2,000 years ago, and rarely interacted with each other. At that time all the people who knew about it were dead. Who can tell? Li Yunxin's face turned as numb as the girl in yellow. Let's pretend that what you said is true. I won't ask why my parents had such a powerful background and what happened later, but why are you telling me all this? In fact, he did remember a detail. Yesterday in the sky, he told Kun Wuzi that his mother was Shangguan Yu. Kun Wuzi was shocked. Now he thought, Kun Wuzi actually talked with him for so long. Did it have anything to do with this? Don't worry, kid. Lord Dongting waved his hand. At this time, one side of the grilled fish had been burnt, and the taste had become bad. However, Lord Dongting didn't seem to want to turn it over. He said slowly, you only know this, but there's another thing. The other thing is the reason why I didn't kill you. Do you know why I saw the dragon aura in you? Please tell me. Lord Dongting's face became serious. He was silent for a while as if he was seriously sorting out his thoughts and then said, at the bottom of Dongting Lake half of the dragon soul, the soul of Shinryu, is sealed. After saying this he looked at Li Yunxin's face. He found that Li Yunxin was still calm without any fear or panic. Whether this calmness was fake or not, Lord Dongting liked such a listener. He rarely had a listener. So he continued. 2,000 years ago Shinryu encountered a disaster. So he separated a part of his soul and sealed it at the bottom of Dongting Lake. As for why it was sealed here, it was because you said I was the emperor's son-in-law, but I used those people's thoughts to control the demon. Demons can divide their essence chi and divine soul and combine them into one. How can it be compared to what humans do? I divided my essence and soul, and Shinryu divided his soul, which became the dragon's 9 sons, Chi-Wen. When Chi-Wen appeared in the world, he was a big demon in the mysterious realm, which was comparable to my cultivation at that time. But then Shinryu captured half of his soul, and also half of his memory. This half is what you saw today, the Zhang restriction of Dongting. A part of Shinryu's soul was sealed at the bottom of the lake, which is the source of this restriction. Half of Chi-Wen's soul and soul guided this source to form a formation. Dragon Chi is the most intimate with Dragon Chi. Chi-Wen appeared in the world. It was just a key to the restriction of Dongting. I have been guarding the dragon soul in this Dongting for 2,000 years. 1,000 years ago, Chi-Wen was sealed at Wei River. Although I don't know why Shinryu did it, but according to today's situation, Shinryu probably did it to prevent trouble before it happened. He turned his palm and the dragon god token that hatred threw to him appeared. This dragon god token is a part of Shinryu's dragon scale. When Shinryu appeared in the world, he wanted to subdue all the demons in the world, and had a fierce fight with the golden-winged rock. Shinryu lost 1 scale and the rock lost 3 feathers. This dragon god token is the broken edge of the scale. Hatred said that Shinryu ordered him to remove the restriction and asked me to see him. But how can Shinryu not know how to remove this restriction? Shinryu said that there is Dragon Sun in this lake, and Chi-Wen in Wei River has the other half of Dragon Chi. If I have to go out of Dongting, I only need to call Chi-Wen and cast a spell. When the 2 Chi collide, the restriction will be removed immediately. He also said that there is another spell which is to combine the power of 2 Dragon Sun. It can also break the balance of this Dragon Chi and suppress this restriction for a short time. However, the effect will not last long. At that time I didn't know what it meant. Now, I know. Lord Dongting straightened up. Hatred said that Shinryu ordered him to leave Dongting. Humph, why do I need him to save me? There must be something strange about this. He became a little excited. Clouds and mist rose around him again. Now I have sealed this Dongting just in case. But it is still not enough. Hatred forged the dragon order, but this token is real. I haven't seen Shinryu for 2,000 years. Now it seems something big has happened. Therefore, he looked at Li Yunxin. I don't care how you become Chi-Wen, but since you are already dragons, I can give this Dongting to you. After that, I will personally go take a look and see just what kind of deity is doing this. Li Yunxin thought carefully about what he just said in his mind. In fact, every single one of his words could be considered earth-shattering. But he still didn't panic and he didn't relax because he really didn't have to worry about his life. He frowned and said in a deep voice, "Because I am Chi-Wen now, you believe me and give me the Dongting that you have been guarding for 2,000 years? It is so good that I feel it is dangerous. Of course, it is not only because of this. But there are other things that I can't tell you now." I just said, Lord Dongting finally stopped roasting the fish. He took the scorched fish down from the flame and blew on it. The mist in his mouth wrapped around the fish like thousands of silk threads entangling it. I just said that you thought I was your enemy and spent a lot of effort. Alas, you didn't know that some things were destined. What's more, you don't know that the things you've done, Ben Jun has seen them all. Because I saw it, I knew you were the one I was looking for. If you can live well and succeed in the future, you will naturally know the secret. The inhibition of this Dongting is like a needle. Although the needle is sharp, it can stand. I spent many years to erect this needle, so you can enter and exit this Dongting without feeling the inhibition. Just now, I asked Hatred to make a full blow with his Dragon Chi to push down this needle. As soon as the balance of the inhibition is disturbed, it will return to the original situation. You can't get in or get out. If this Dongting is like before, even if I do it myself, it will take several years. So you just stay here peacefully. Lord Dongting stands up. He looks at Li Yunxin. Oh, one more thing. Well, Shinryu's spirit is sealed at the bottom of the lake, so there will always be Dragon Chi leaking out. Occasionally, some aquatic creatures pass by and get the Dragon Chi, then they become big monsters. That's where the White Forest comes from. The flood monster that is born because of the Dragon Chi, although it has a high realm, it is not rational. It only knows how to chase blood. If you take over this Dongting, you have to be careful. You are good at reading minds. But it doesn't work on them, or they are not demons but just beasts with the supernatural power of demons. You have just entered the real state, hee. I hope you won't lose your life here. You should know that this Dongting is sealed now, so you have nowhere to escape. Think about it. Lord Dongting waved his hand happily. Just now outside, why did I tell you that you shouldn't stay here for long? Li Yunxin realizes something and suddenly stands up. But Lord Dongting doesn't give him a chance to speak. He throws the burnt carp in his hand to Li Yunxin and shouts, "She loves you and misses you. Hee, let's see if you can save her." Li Yunxin is stunned. But he immediately reaches out and firmly grabs the grilled fish. The next moment, the burnt grilled fish suddenly expands. It turns into a beautiful woman in black. However, the black clothes on her body were not black clothes, but the burnt material of her clothes. As soon as it meets the wind, it immediately turns into powder, revealing the naked, white, tender and smooth body. It is Red Lady. Li Yunxin holds this smooth body with both hands. Before he can do anything, Lord Dongting has already laughed 3 times and waved his sleeves. The bright sun and blue sky in front of him suddenly disappear without a trace. Li Yunxin falls back into the dark and gloomy lake thousands of meters below with Red Lady in his arms. He immediately glances at the side. He is still at the place where he saw the red flower just now. But the red flower has disappeared. The woman in yellow is thrown out together with the 2 of them. In just a moment she is pressed into a blood mist by the deep water. She wasn't the only one. Not far away, a bloody mist that looked like a giant firework had also appeared. Li Yunxin once saw Ling Kongzi and Mu Yun above Dongting. He immediately realizes that the large blood mist is those white and fat people. Lord Dongting is really gone. He takes away his palace and throws out all the people he doesn't want to stay inside. If that was the case, then Lu Ling would definitely be in the water. Li Yunxin glances at the unconscious Red Lady in his arms and finally has time to say the words in his heart. Motherf * King old pervert. Lord Dongting now imprisons him in this Dongting lake, and uses him as a laborer to kill those flood dragons. This monster looks kind, but how can he really let people take advantage of him? As soon as this idea comes to Li Yunxin, he hasn't decided whether to wake up Red Lady or go to find Lu Ling first. At this moment, he hears a muffled roar coming from the deep lake in the distance. A huge, ferocious, hornless dragon head, with a long and thick body behind it rushes at him. This newborn flood dragon pounces straight down from the white forest. Its body is as big as Li Yunxin's real body of the realm of truth. It is even bigger. But it also seems to be afraid of those towering skeletons. It only passes through the forest and doesn't dare to rush around. If not, the roar just now would have swallowed Li Yunxin and Red Lady. Li Yunxin sighs. He only glances at the evil flood dragon and then turns around and runs away. Chapter 205. But even though it escaped, it only circled around in the white forest. The dragon's skeleton, which had been preserved for thousands of years, was not ordinary material. When Li Yunxin passed by the skeleton with the unconscious Red Lady in his arms, he tested it. Its hardness and toughness were amazing. It was no wonder that even though the evil flood dragon was savage and slow-witted, it still knew how to dodge. It must have suffered in this white forest before. On one hand he wanted to avoid the evil dragon, and on the other hand he wanted to find Ling Kongzi, who might have also been thrown into the water. Ling Kongzi's body was already a bag of skin, and her soul was hidden in the soul-calming bell. If it was a person, although it was dim in the water, there would still be things of different sizes, so it would be easier to find. But although her bag of skin had been tempered, it no longer had any spiritual power. It was hard to say whether it could withstand the pressure of the thousands of meters deep water. If her body was crushed and only the bell was left, it would really be like looking for a needle in a haystack. He lured the dragon around a few times in the white forest. The evil dragon knew that it could not catch up with this cunning little thing, so it jumped out of the forest and followed Li Yunxin in the water above. Lord Dongting said that this dragon was cruel and stupid, but it was actually an exaggeration. Although they were not as smart and astute as big demons and humans, they were born of dragon chi and had the instinct of beasts. In terms of intelligence, they were roughly the same as adult cats and dogs, or even slightly better. This dragon was a dark giant beast. There were no scales on the surface of its body but slippery tough skin. There were white spots scattered on the skin, as if the creator had accidentally sprinkled a few spots of titanium white on it when dyeing it. It also had no claws, only a hornless dragon head. It gradually realized that the little thing in the forest was looking for something, and its dizzy brain had a dizzy idea. Seeing where Li Yunxin was going, it spat out a mouthful of thick ink-like water, dyeing the water so dark that he could not see it. It chased after Li Yunxin like this for a while and gradually felt bored. He roared for a while more, leaped into the forest a few times, then turned around and swam off to who knows where. At this time, Li Yunxin put down the unconscious Red Lady on a thick rib that extended from the spine. Based on his eyesight, he couldn't find Ling Kongzi's body after going around for a long time. It must have been crushed. The bell that carried her soul was nowhere to be seen. She must have fallen into the water. She had lost her physical body, but her soul was protected by the magic treasure so she could still feel it. If such a sentient soul was buried in the mud at the bottom of the lake for a few years, a dozen years, or even hundreds or thousands of years, what kind of terrifying situation would it be? Even though Li Yunxin wasn't a kind person, he was still shocked when he thought of this. If he were to fall into such a situation one day, he would rather die. He put Red Madam down and took out his folding fan from the bottom of the water. Naturally, his fan was not an ordinary item. It wouldn't get wet even if it got wet. Then he stared at Red Lady's body for a while. This carp spirit must have spent a lot of effort when she transformed into a human form. Her body was exquisite, indeed worthy of a beauty's praise. But Li Yunxin wasn't too interested in these things. He was born with a good body in both his previous and current lives. He had never experienced the feeling of being crazy and heartbroken for one or a few women. But it often made other people sigh sorrowfully. If you didn't spend a lot of effort, you wouldn't cherish it. He was tired of a lot of things, and those feelings were brought to this life. But in this life, in spite of the memories of the past and the thoughts of the past, there was still a body that was growing. Based on his previous life's knowledge, he knew that a lot of times, the material also determined the spirit. His body was full of vitality. How could he say that he didn't have any romantic thoughts? That wasn't realistic. The first time he saw Qiao Jiesin, he had a good impression of her. It was hard to say whether it was a physiological impulse playing tricks. For ordinary people, this was a good thing to enjoy. But for him, this was a weakness and an Achilles heel. So he chose to abandon his original body and transform into this dragon body. Although she still looked like the Li Yunxin of the past with human organs and meridians, she was completely different from a teenager who was in heat at the age of 14 or 15. So he looked at Red Lady's body for a long time and breathed a sigh of relief. He didn't feel anything at all. It wasn't that he lost some kind of ability. In fact, sometimes he felt that he was walking on the great Tao alone, with a feeling of solitude. But solitude was spiritual, and had nothing to do with physical desires. Sometimes he wished that there was someone. It didn't matter if it was a man or a woman, old or young, beautiful or ugly, good or evil, that he could get along with freely. It was easy to get along with Lu Laodao. But it wasn't the kind of feeling he wanted. What Li Yunxin wanted, to use the words of his previous world, to put it in a more artistic and pretentious way, then they were soul mates. Highly compatible with his soul and thoughts, he wanted such a person. Before meeting such a person, he would never mistreat himself. He talked to himself like this in his heart, and finally his eyes fell on his folding fan. After entering Red Flower City, he realized that there could be such a wide space inside, instead of a narrow place that might make him go crazy. In the past, because of some secret and personal reasons, he had never set foot in it, but now he was going to explore it. In such a dangerous and strange environment, using his own temporary imperial residence as a residence was indeed a wise choice. But even today, Li Yunxin still felt that this thing was very strange. It was a strange feeling that was incompatible with the real world. There were immortals and demons in this world, but they were all evolved from the people and animals of this world. But the so-called temporary imperial residence and dragon palace, you said it was a magical power? But it gave him a different feeling than any other magical power. This was one of the reasons why he treated this thing carefully before. But now that the opportunity had come, Li Yunxin took a deep breath, held up Red Lady, and put it into his folding fan for the first time. Lord Dongding's palace looked almost the size of Dongting. Li Yunxin didn't know if he could reach all the places he could see at that time, but at least he didn't see any obvious boundary. And he thought that since he was in the real realm, he should have a dragon palace. Since it was a dragon palace, although it was not magnificent, at least, it was passable. But what he saw in front of him was not what he thought. There was a vast expanse of whiteness between heaven and earth. He couldn't tell up from down, left from right, and he couldn't see the boundary. In this vast chaos, some things were floating: half a basket of green plums, a pot of wine, a dozen ghosts with dull faces, 2 books, half a sugar man, a thin sword. In short, the small things that Li Yunxin put into the folding fan before were now floating in this fog. He used to take things out of the folding fan just like a person taking things out of his pocket. He could always feel it with his wakin or his hand. So he just grabbed it and took it out. He didn't know what it looked like in his pocket. Li Yunxin used to know that there was a space in the temporary imperial residence, but he didn't see the real appearance until today. Now that he saw it clearly, he had doubts in his heart. The appearance of the temporary imperial residence didn't completely follow the master's wishes, but directly reflected the most important thing in his heart, or the most unique characteristic. No one told him such things, so he could only slowly ponder and guess by himself. Then the appearance of the temporary imperial residence probably didn't completely follow his wishes, at least not at the beginning. But in any case, he was not a heartless person, so why did it look like this inside? He sighed and planned to try to make some changes. But at this moment he heard a soft exhalation. Li Yunxin looked down. He first saw the snow-white and delicate skin, then the flat collarbone. Then he saw Red Lady's face. He didn't know when she opened her eyes and looked at him. The two looked at each other in silence for a while. As soon as Li Yunxin loosened his hand, Red Lady floated in the white chaos. The next moment, a red light flashed on her body, and she had a set of red clothes that she wore when they first met on the night of Minghan. He was silent for a while and said, "Lord Dongting may have left Dongting. Before he left, he threw you to me." Red Lady didn't speak but just looked at him blankly. Li Yunxin coughed. "Earlier he was roasting you with a branch. I didn't know it was you at that time because I really couldn't feel whacking. If it was not just domestic violence but because of what I did before. It's not because of you." Red Lady finally spoke. Her voice was not as calm as she looked. Compared with Li Yunxin's tone, her words were more emotional. "But I am still very happy. You came to Dongting." Li Yunxin was a little stunned and frowned. "I have my own business." But he was interrupted by Red Lady. The fish monster didn't seem to care about his explanation at all. "It's not what you think. Although my father. Alas. But in fact the branch you saw was the branch of Jianmu. That fire was his crimson tail fire. I am a ghost cultivator within spirit, so I am always afraid of the red yang qi. My father refined the branch of Jianmu into my body and mixed it with her red tail fire. In this way, although I am a ghost cultivator, I am not afraid of those things. But in your eyes, alas. You were killed by him first and became a ghost cultivator. Then you suffered so much and stayed with me. Did he take away all the shrimp soldiers and crab generals in the palace?" Li Yunxin sighed. "He actually said, it was for your own good." Red Lady was silent for a while in this white chaos, and a smile appeared on her lips. But even Li Yunxin couldn't see whether she was a little bitter or not. "How can I see his sincerity and hypocrisy? You said you loved me before, but it turned out that you lied to me. You said you lied to me, but now you came to Dongting in person." Li Lang could be said to have no choice, and he could be said to have come for the sake of Ling Kongzi. "But how can I know that you're not sincere even though you're pretending?" "You don't have to defend yourself. You don't know if something is true or not even if you say it, so it's better not to say it. Living in this world, no matter how you live, is nothing more than coaxing others to deceive yourself with you." Saying this, Red Madam slowly smiled. But she still stood there obediently. Li Yunxin listened quietly. After a moment of silence, she furrowed her brows. "You are doing a very dangerous thing," he said in a deep voice. Starting with such a sentence, he felt that he could finally recover his calmness. "I am a person who is cold by nature. I don't know what it means to be good to others, and it is difficult for me to give appropriate feedback to others' kindness. Some people like to receive kindness and gratitude from others from the bottom of their hearts. But for people like me, being treated kindly by others will make me feel uneasy. This feeling of uneasiness and awkwardness makes me feel both psychological and physical discomfort, so I don't like making friends with others very much. Not to mention your stupid kindness. If I treat you well one day, it means that I must have something to ask of you. You have learned your lesson last time. This time, if you still think that I treat you well, have you in my heart, and come to Dongting to save you because of my conscience, then you should be careful." Li Yunxin looked at her. "I will use any possible means to eliminate the threats around me and the factors that make me feel uncomfortable. Even if you really stay in my heart, it means that you have become a doom. If I want to pass the doom, the method is simple. I will make a trap so that you don't know it. When you die, you will still cry happiness. Now let me tell you. You think that your father did something good to you and kept you here. You also think that I may still have a place for you in my heart and come for you. But the reality is, your father once again treats you as a tool. He treats you cruelly and tries to arouse my pity. Then he leaves you here and wants you to become a chess piece again. And I appear here, I do want to come to you after everything is done. But I come to you just to say the following words to you. If I were you, I would stay away from people like me. The pain I give you will be 100 times greater than the possible happiness I can give you. I will send you to Mount June in a moment. Although this Dongting has been sealed, it is so big. You can always have a place to go, don't show up in front of me again. Red Lady looked at Li Yunxin and didn't speak. After a while, she finally frowned and sighed. How can you even say such words? In order to, not to make me sad and regret in the future, you actually humiliate yourself like this? Li Yunxin stopped talking and turned around to leave his dragon palace. But Red Lady said softly, Okay, I won't say it anymore. But you can't drive me away. There is a reason for me to stay in Dongting. If I leave, you can't do something. Li Yunxin had turned around and turned his back to her. After a while, he asked, In this Dongting, is there anything you can do but I can't? Red Lady let out a sigh gently. Then she said, Have you seen the flood dragon in the lake, my dear? Yes. I also heard from my father that Bai Yunxin plotted to kill Ling Kongzi because the adopted daughter of Golden Rock mistakenly thought that Ling Kongzi killed you and the 9th young master. Do you know why? Li Yunxin frowned. What do you mean why? This is my plot. I certainly know why. Hey my dear. Li darling. Red Madam smiled and sighed. That Bai Yunxin said that she likes to eat dragons. But the 9th young master is just a monster in the transcendent state. Wouldn't it be easy for Bai Yunxin to catch him? Why didn't she really eat him for 1,000 years? Have you ever thought about it? Chapter 206. Then tell me. He still doesn't turn around, but it's not convenient for him to leave. Red Lady steps on the chaos under her feet and walks to him slowly. She stroked Li Yunxin's chest with a finger and said, Li darling, think about it again. The 9th young master has lived in Weishui River for 1,000 years. How can Bai Yunxin not know that? But why did he run away a few days ago, afraid that Bai Yunxin would chase after him? In fact, this question has always been in Li Yunxin's mind. On a rainy night, when he first met the 9th young master in the ruined temple, he seemed to be hiding from someone. He used the incense table in the temple to make a fire and roasted the body of the Taoist of Lingshu Sword School. In the middle of eating, he heard the noise in the sky and ran away in panic. Later, he thinks that he should be hiding from Bai Yunxin at that time. In the past, Li Yunxin thought that Bai Yunxin didn't eat the 9th young master because both of them had backers. The 9th young master is the son of Shinryu, and Bai Yunxin is the adopted daughter of Golden Winged Rock. Shinryu is the common lord of demons and monsters in the world, while Golden Rock is the common lord of the feather race in the world. But later he knows that at least, it seems, that the 9th young master is not in power. His position in front of Shinryu is far lower than that of Bai Yunxin. Moreover, neither of them seemed like the kind of people who would play the game of chasing, running, and switching to the other person when they caught up to them. So something happened during that time. And those things are related to me in Dongting in the future? Of course. You are so smart. Red Lady says with a smile, It is said that the Golden Winged Rock likes to eat dragons. But how many dragons are there in the world? 1 Shinryu and 9 dragon sons? How can he like to eat? But this kind of thing can't be a rumor. If it is a rumor, Shinryu, as the common lord of demons and monsters in the world, will not allow this kind of nonsense to spread. So, it's this evil Jiao? Li Yunxin sighed in a low voice. So the legendary Golden Winged Rock that likes to eat dragons is actually referring to this evil dragon? Exactly. Bai Yunxin said that she was traveling the world, but she was actually looking for food for her adoptive father. The 9th young master was the one who handed over to her, and I was the one who handed over to the 9th young master. Li Lang could think about it. Where did the flesh and blood of the thousands of skeletons in the lake go? If we let them rot slowly, can we still stay in Dongting? The truth was rather shocking. Eating the flesh and blood of the evil flood dragon was not shocking. All he said was, this evil Jiao was born because a part of Shinryu's soul leaked out and contaminated the water creatures at the bottom of the lake. Li Yunxin felt that something was amiss. In other words, although they're not real dragons, they're still dragons. If Shinryu knew that the Golden Winged Rock was eating this thing, unless he was a coward, how could he not be angry? But your father? My father said that it was approved by Shinryu. The 9th young master didn't know about it and thought that I was hiding it from my father. But in fact he knew everything. Li Lang, what are you worried about? Red Madam rolled her eyes and comforted him. You don't have to worry. My father said that probably because Shinryu suffered a disaster and its strength was greatly damaged, so it used this method to win over the King Rock to deter the demons. Bai Yunxin pursued the ninth young master before because the evil Jiao was born late this year. The golden-winged rock was impatient, so Bai Yunxin was impatient too. She said that she might as well catch the ninth young master and give him to her adoptive father. I'm not very clear about the details, but Li Lang, now that Dongting is sealed, there's no Jiao meat to give to Bai Yunxin. Li Lang, have you thought of any way? At this time, Li Yunxin has no idea what kind of existence Lord Dongting is to him. The ninth young master claimed to be his friend, but Li Yunxin only wanted to kill him. He didn't want to have a friend who might kill him at any time. He could talk to Kun Wuxia in a friendly way, but that was only because of the situation. Once the conditions were right, he would kill Kun Wuxia without even blinking his eyes. Only this Lord Dongting. Li Yunxin really didn't know what kind of existence this 3,000-year-old big demon was. Every time he thought he was going to kill him, he would get something from him. And every time he thought he could be a friend, at least not an enemy, he would be tricked by him. Now that he was trapped in Dongting and knew these things, he didn't understand the meaning of the old demon at all. If what Lord Dongting said was true, then it meant that his bloodline was nobler than anyone else in this world. The emperors and the royal family in the human world had noble bloodlines. More than one country's royal family would worship the two sages, and only their portraits. The emperors who had millions of people couldn't even see the two sages' faces when they were alive. The kingdom of Qin wasn't a small country, but if Ling Kongzi went to the capital, he could also receive the courtesy of the emperor. This was not only because the cultivators had unimaginable power, but also because Daotong and Kenzo had the power to control the world. Now, Lord Dongting told him that the master of calligraphy and the master of sword had a son when they were young, but they didn't have any more children. That son entered the secular world and gave birth to descendants. Then, the kingdom of ancient Wei was established for more than 2,000 years, and it had many branches. Then, the kingdom of Wei was destroyed and only one branch of the Shangguan family survived. In fact, from a long time ago, the two sages probably didn't care about the so-called kinship anymore. 1, 2, 3, 4, or even more generations they might still care about it. However, after thousands of years, such kinship seemed to have no meaning to anyone. The Shangguan family had been the royal family for hundreds of years. Other than the direct line of descent, they must have left behind countless descendants in the world. If they were only related by blood to the descendants of the two sages, there would probably be millions of mouths in the world. However, Li Yunxin's mother, Shangguanyu, returned to Daotong after nearly 3,000 years. This was what cultivators often talked about as the fruit of fate. Because of this fruit of fate, the thin bloodline of the two sages in her body finally had a real meaning. And when it came to Li Yunxin, it also had a meaning. Lord Dongting helped the Shangguan family establish the kingdom of ancient Wei because of the grace of the Master of Swords' guidance before he achieved enlightenment. But Li Yunxin didn't believe that after more than 2,700 years, this big demon would suddenly think of that love and decide to help him again. His mother, Shangguanyu, had eloped with the art saint's remnant with the all-seeing jade slip and lived in seclusion for more than 10 years. But now, small fries from the Freemasonry and the Lingshu sword sect suddenly came to stir up trouble. With all these things mixed together, Li Yunxin realized that he seemed to have fallen into a huge whirlpool. At least it was no longer the plot of a mountain village youth facing a crisis and struggling to survive alone. He sighed slightly in his heart. This should be what the real world should be like. To survive from such a dangerous experience, there must be someone else helping or restraining him. For example, when he first came to the city of Wei, someone did something to Inspector Yin. He didn't care that Inspector Yin sent someone to investigate his past, because it would take more than a day to investigate, and by that time he had already done what he wanted to do. But he didn't expect that an experienced person like Inspector Yin would quickly come to a practical conclusion. He even found out where his family lived. Of course, it was wrong information. This meant that someone was helping him. Therefore, in everything that Li Yunxin did after that, he intentionally or unintentionally left some loopholes or leeway, so that one or several forces hiding in the dark could have a chance to infiltrate. But the problem was, they seemed to disappear. Now, when Red Madam asked him what he should do, Li Yunxin was silent for a long time and didn't speak. He didn't mean to hold back, but he really didn't know what to do. There were too many pieces of information, too many clues and no clue. Because of so many things, he was at a loss. It was as if he had returned to the days when he first came to the city of Wei. He sighed, "There's nothing I can do. Help me find Ling Kongzi first." This was a key figure that he had overlooked. Ling Kongzi had met the two sages before he went down the mountain. It was not an ordinary thing. Li Yunxin didn't know his background before. He only thought that what the two sages told him was the internal secret of Dao Tong, which was related to how to get the translucent jade slip. But now he realized that it might also be related to him. At this moment, Red Madam's face suddenly changed. "Li, there are people outside," she said in a low but serious voice. The Red Madam, who was infatuated with talent, had become a completely different person. "They are fighting near Dongting and they have triggered the inhibition of Dongting." Before Li Yunxin asked, Red Madam had already said, "My father refined the Jianmu into my body. I can feel it. You can't leave me." Li Yunxin sighed and said, "All right. Let's go and have a look." He thought that the people fighting were probably the doppelgangers of Hatred and Kun Wuxia. The Taoist of the Langya cave abode followed Hatred here. Now the Lord Dongting didn't care about it. Besides, he had been fooled by him before, so he was very angry. It would be strange if he didn't find someone to vent his anger on. But after diving at the bottom of the lake for a quarter of an hour, he realized that he was wrong when he came to the surface of the lake. It was still night. It had only been 2 or 3 hours since the Lord Dongting took him to the bottom of the lake. The place where he came out of the water was in the center of Dongting. Looking around, it was vast and misty. He couldn't even see the hills and the horizon. On the top of the sky, there were the moon and stars as if two people were in the sea. If he ignored the light on the east bank, that was the light. Other places were dark horizontal lines. There were clouds at the intersection of the water and the night sky. The boundary was still clear. But the eastern part was bright. The sky was also slightly yellow, as if the setting sun was still hidden behind the distant mountains. Li Yunxin only needed a glance to realize that it was only the length of a finger from where she was standing. But in fact, it should be more than a kilometer long. On the east bank of Dongting, a kilometer-long area was on fire at this time. He had seen this scene when Ling Kongzi and Bai Yunxin fought. "Let's go and see." He frowned and gently breathed. He only said 3 words. The city of Wei was also on the east bank of Dongting. Red Lady didn't say anything. It seemed that she didn't expect this scene either. She waved her hand and called out the Yi by Jade boat. Li Yunxin stepped on the bow of the boat. Driven by Wakan, the magic weapon shot to the east bank like an arrow. It was even faster than Li Yunxin's real body on the water. In just a quarter of an hour, the outline of the east bank gradually became clear in front of him. It was indeed on fire. Yesterday afternoon, Li Yunxin rained heavily and the surrounding land was soaked. In the evening, Kun Wuxia overturned Dongting again. The splashing waves even destroyed the surrounding trees and buildings. The land became a piece of mud. However, this piece of land was now ablaze with raging flames. The fire seemed to be burning the soil and water in the mud. It rose more than 10 meters high on the open ground. When Li Yunxin and Red Lady drove the Yi by Jade boat closer, they felt a terrible fire wall coming to them. It even covered the sky. But the inhibition of Dongting had worked after all. At this time, Li Yunxin could see what it looked like. It was like a huge cover. An inverted semicircular cover surrounded Dongting. The fire wall was surging on the shore, but it could only stick to the invisible inhibition and burn. The heat could get in but the fire couldn't. Li Yunxin and Red Lady looked at each other. They realized that such a momentum might not be made by Hatred and Kun Wuxia. Hatred was not an idiot. How could he fight with the doppelganger of Kun Wuxia's soul at this time? But other than that, I don't know what happened to the city of Wei. Li Yunxin looked at the fire wall in front of him and sighed. I still have a few helpers and a friend outside. Now I am trapped here and they... He didn't finish his words. He and Red Lady's Yi by Jade boat were hit away at the same time. The indescribable great power suddenly came. The last thing Li Yunxin saw was that in the overwhelming fire, the invisible barrier of Dongting seemed to be hit by an invisible giant fist. The power was so great that the barrier was like a real thing with shape and substance. It was dented inwardly by a tiny arc. And this tiny was only relative to the entire inhibition of Dongting. But in Li Yunxin's place, it was the fire on the other shore that rushed over, stirring up a terrible impact. The impact immediately blew away the two unprepared people. Even the water in the lake was set off a huge wave of more than 10 meters high. In the blink of an eye, Red Lady's figure disappeared. No one knew where she was sent flying to. But Li Yunxin saw the last scene before his sight was blocked by the wave. This impact didn't seem to be aimed at him and Red Lady. He saw a huge figure, almost as long as his real body, but it was the height of a human figure. It hit the inhibition of Dongting. It seemed that it was blown back by a terrible blow and hit the barrier. However, it was not the first time. At that moment, when the human figure touched the barrier and moved awkwardly, before it could make an effective counterattack, at least hundreds of attacks came again. Due to the continuous bombardment, the human figure trembled. His trembling formed a terrifying shockwave within the barrier. That was to say, it was unknown who was fighting with the gigantic humanoid, but just the shockwaves were enough to send a great demon at the true realm flying. What kind of a great demon is this? This was the first thought in Li Yunxin's mind at that time. Chapter 207. But he didn't want to escape like Red Lady. No matter how big the wave was, it was still a wave. Two God realm demons with relatively high cultivation were sent flying by this thing. How was that supposed to work? Presumably, Red Lady also felt shocked in her heart. Borrowing the momentum of being sent flying, she dived into the water. But Li Yunxin didn't want to hide. First, he felt that the people outside the restriction might have come because of him. Second, how could he lose his momentum because of this? When he was flying in the air, he roared angrily, and his body immediately emitted a weeping golden light. A few strands of the white mane that only appeared when he transformed into a demon god appeared on his temples, and fine small scales appeared on his cheeks. He released the power of the divine beast in his body to a certain extent, so that his body became stronger, and at the same time he retained the meridians of a human sea of qi. It could be considered as a way to attack and defend. With a loud bang, he broke through the monstrous wave and reappeared by the lake with a large amount of water, mist and light. From the time he was submerged to the moment he re-emerged from the water, only a short period of 2 breaths had passed. But the battle on the shore seemed to have come to an end. The raging flames were still burning, but the huge human figure had disappeared. But if one looked carefully, one would find that there were some changes in the flames. It was as if there were many little flaming birds flying in the flames. Their dark red bodies and orange feathers, if one didn't pay attention, one would think that they were cyclones in the flames. Innumerable little birds flew up and down, chasing even smaller human figures. Just now, Li Yunxin only saw the size of the human figure, but didn't see its appearance clearly. But now, looking at those little people again, he vaguely felt that they were the adults just now, just that they were scattered. They split into thousands of people in the flames and fled in all directions. But the wall of fire at this time seemed to have become a cage. The little people in the fire roared, and their figures gradually became thinner. Those who were not agile were caught by the birds, and with a peck or a tilt of the neck, the little people were eaten into their stomachs. The flames burned silently, climbing up the restriction barrier in front of Li Yunxin. Other than that, there was no other sound. After half an hour, the densely packed human figures in the fire were finally eaten up by the birds. The last human figure fled to the edge of the flames. Countless firebirds blotted out the sky and swallowed it whole. At this moment, the little man finally made a sound. The sound did not match his figure. It was low and hoarse, but it was like a great bell. The ground trembled slightly. "One day I will," but his voice was quickly drowned out by the flock of birds. 2 breaths later, the last figure disappeared. Li Yunxin's heart skipped a beat. That figure called himself Zhen. He did not know which emperor it was. After another quarter of an hour, the flames also dissipated. It was still nighttime. As the intensity of the fire decreased, the howling wind in the air also gradually disappeared. She hears the sound of waves and Dongting again. There were stars and a moon in the sky, and in front of him, the receding flames parted in the middle, like 2 bright, gorgeous curtains drawn slowly to either side. The exposed ground had already been burned dry by the fire, and faint white smoke was rising from it. A few people were standing on the ground. Their cheeks were reflected warm yellow by the flame curtains on both sides, but their backs were coated with a layer of cold light by the stars and the moon. Against the silent and dark mountains and forests in the distance, the bright fire on both sides, they just looked at Li Yunxin. After a few breaths, the flames completely dissipated. Those birds that were originally flying in the fire joined together and went straight into the palm of the first person. He was not afraid of the high temperature at all. He shook a figure in his hand, and the firebirds were collected in it. Finally, they turned into a strange and mysterious character. Li Yunxin did not recognize the character. It should be the true rune of Daotong. But Li Yunxin recognized that person. It was Kun Wuxia. And he realized that if he guessed right, this should be the original body of Kun Wuxia, not the real body of his soul. The original body of Kun Wuxia did not come alone. Behind him were 7 Taoists in different clothes. But they all had one thing in common: they looked at Li Yunxin like looking at a corpse. After staring at him for a while, Kunwuzi said, "Open the inhibition and hand over Dongting." Li Yunxin stood on the waves and looked behind him. The direction of the city of Wei was the same as usual. There was nothing unusual. There was no one behind them. He spread his hands. "I can't open it. I also want to go out. Where are my people?" "Your people?" The Taoist in the Shenjing realm smiled coldly. "I heard that you had some demons under your command, but they all scattered and disappeared. There was also a Taoist who escaped with those demons. There is a ghost emperor in the city of Wei? Do you know who I just killed?" Li Yunxin was silent for a while and raised his head. "Oh, so you killed Emperor Li? Anyway, it can't be that Emperor Yi. Look at how arrogant you are now. You don't need to make a big fuss to kill him." Kunwuzi smiled slightly. "Emperor Li killed several cultivators of Daotong, but he fled to the direction of the city of Wei. I was there and so were my disciples. That's why we ran into each other. It's a pity that you used to be in the state of Taishang Wangqing, but now you are only in the state of Shi Shenjing. So I killed him. It took me a lot of effort to kill him. If it wasn't for this thing, I wouldn't have let you enter Dongting so easily. Now, Li Yunxin, hand over Dongting. You have a relationship with the two saints. Although you are a demon, it doesn't mean you can't enter Daotong. This Taoist isn't that Ling Kongzi. This Taoist's words are valid once spoken." The 7 Taoists behind him didn't say anything, but their faces didn't look good. It seemed that they couldn't bear to see this head of the Langya cave talking to a demon so amiably. Li Yunxin was silent for a while after listening to him. Then he frowned. "Are we going to fight?" After saying this, Kunwuzi looked normal, but the faces of the 7 Taoists behind him changed instantly. It seemed that he told the truth that was regarded as a big secret by those people, and they didn't know how Li Yunxin knew it. Because of this great surprise, one of them couldn't help but shout, "How did you know this? Tell me, are you really in cahoots with those demons?" The age of the person who spoke couldn't be seen. He looked like a middle-aged man. He had 3 strands of short beard, thin lips, and always pursed, which made him look arrogant and unruly. He was tall, even half a head taller than Kunwuzi. At this moment he stared at Li Yunxin angrily, but the look in his eyes was a little strange. It was not exactly the disgust when facing demons and enemies. At the same time, there was a trace of soft emotion, disappointment. However, Li Yunxin didn't know when he met this guy and when he made him have any expectation on him. He glanced at the man and sighed. "Is it that hard to guess? Since you all came to the city of Wei and Dongting one after another, you probably know that some of the souls of Shinryu are sealed in this Dongting. Now you can't wait to take this Dongting by force. You even helped me to reveal the name of Lord Dongting. I think you were thinking about this place at that time. You even thought about Shinryu. If you didn't want to fight, why would you do such a sensitive thing?" Before Kunwuzi said anything, that person interrupted again. "You actually know that there are souls of Shinryu in this Dongting. You are indeed. You actually chose this path. Why don't you be a human but a demon?" Li Yunxin frowned and looked at him for a while and then looked at Kunwuzi. He spread out his hands and tilted his head. It turned out that body language seemed to be effective everywhere. Kunwuzi understood Li Yunxin's meaning. He coughed and glanced at the person next to him. "Tongji?" It turned out that the person was called Tongji. However, Kunwuzi's reminder didn't seem to have any effect. The Taoist who said Tongji was still a little excited. The 6 people around him all looked at him differently, but it was still a strange look. Was that sympathy? Tongji snorted and looked at Li Yunxin. "Look at so that you know I's Taoist name is Yuqinzi. Back then your mother was abducted by a heretical cultivator. She stubbornly refused to come to her senses and gave birth to you. Now, although she has unfortunately passed away on account that I once had a relationship with her, this has become a result of fate for me. I just didn't expect that you and your you are also a heretical cultivator. How can you not be a human? Your body, hair, and skin were given to you by your parents. Your mother was pregnant for 10 months and gave birth to your good body. Did she ask you to abandon her body? Now, immediately unlock the inhibition of Dongting and tell the Great Master everything you know. If you tell me everything and reflect on your past sins, then I will remember your mother's love and guarantee that you will lose your Taoist power and cultivate the Tao again in my Langya cave abode. I can also use this monster body to atone for you and your mother's sins to Daotong and Kenzo. Isn't it better to be a clean person?" Li Yunxin listened to him in surprise and finally couldn't help but ask Kunwuzi, "Who the hell is this idiot?" Yuqinzi was furious immediately. Kunwuzi sighed and shouted in a low voice, "Enough! How long do you want to make trouble? Originally, when these 8 people appeared, they were accompanied by flames and darkness. In Li Yunxin's eyes they were really cool. Kun Wuzi came in person and the 7 people behind him seemed to have their own supernatural powers. They just stood there and didn't say anything, just looking at him coldly. It was a great deterrent. However, after hearing Yu Qinzi's words, the other 6 people also came to persuade him. They tried to calm him down and not be rude in front of the great master. There were also some who persuaded him and looked at Li Yunxin with slight disgust. For a moment, the imposing manner of a master cultivator was all gone. Instead, it became a family gossip in the market. However, it could also be seen that the 7 people behind Kun Wuzi had a good relationship with each other. This should be an anomaly in the world of cultivation. He originally thought that the cultivators of Daotong and Kenzo should be cold and heartless. After all, they had to go through the trials. But now, it seemed that they were like brothers. Maybe there was some other inside story. When Kun Wuzi saw him staring at the 7 people, he frowned. They are the Langya 7 under eye. This Tongji was originally acquainted with your mother, Shangguanyu? Then tell him to control his mouth. Li Yunxin frowned. And pay attention to your own intelligence. When Yu Qinzi heard this, he was stunned at first. Then he widened his eyes. Even his 6 brothers couldn't stop him. He shouted, "You little brat! Do you know that your mother was originally going to become my Dao companion? If it wasn't for that demon. I'm so angry. Now you are actually so stubborn. In the future, I will definitely teach you a lesson and let you know that you and your father." Seeing that his words were getting more and more ridiculous, Kun Wuzi directly waved his sleeve. Yu Qinzi could only open his mouth, but no sound could be heard. He thought for a while and said, "The matter between him and your mother is complicated. There is a reason for his attitude. However, the reason why I brought his clone here is to let you know that I's previous promise wasn't empty nonsense. Perhaps you already know, or perhaps you don't know enough. Your mother, Shangguanyu, is the descendant of the 2 saints, and you are also the descendant of the 2 saints. The attitude of Daotong and Kenzo towards you is the attitude of Yu Qinzi towards you. They mourn your misfortune and are angry at your incompetence. If you were a good person, no one would want to become a demon. I also slightly understood some things. Previously, you told my clone that there was another faction that was causing trouble and wanted to stir up a storm in the world. The failure of your parents was probably the tragedy caused by that force. And because of that tragedy, you, a young man, were forced to do some wrong things in order to survive alone. You killed some people you shouldn't have killed, and then you made such a choice. I have already said that it's all because of one word. I had no choice. If it was someone else, even if the 4 of them were involved, it would still be very difficult to forgive. But after all, you have the blood of the 2 saints. We cultivators don't pay much attention to bloodline and emotion. However, now that this matter is in front of us, it is also bloodline and also fate. So, I told you to remove the inhibition and hand over Dongting. Then go back to the mountain with I. If you want to disperse your personal ability, disperse it and cultivate the Tao again. If you don't want to disperse it, you can also become a demon. After all, you were a human before. Demons are demons after all. Standing with them, you can't really understand the joy of being a human. Speaking of suitable, Daotong is more suitable for you. Li Yunxin, you have also seen a lot of storms. Although you are young, you are more mature and prudent than many people I have met. Think about it, let go of your emotions and think about it. Do you want to be a demon or a human? It is said that being a demon is free and unfettered. But when a demon walks in the world, he must always be on guard against being stared at by the masters of Daotong. If you show your original form, it will make people panic. It's okay to be a natural demon, but you have been a human for 14 years? Can you really stand such a life? You have to know that the choice you make now will affect hundreds or even thousands of years in the future. Now, because of the bloodline of the 2 saints, I sincerely tell you one thing. Kun Wuzi sighs softly and looks at Li Yunxin with clear eyes. Come back. Li Yunxin listens to him seriously and also sighs. To be honest, he is indeed tempted. Chapter 208. He was tempted. He wanted to use Kun Wuzi's emotions to set up another trap. Any slightly strong emotion would be an obvious flaw for him, but there were 2 problems. He didn't know whether what Kun Wuzi said was true or not. He had seen too many situations that sounded sincere, but the truth might not be like this. Besides, the other party was no longer the governor, no longer Ling Kongzi, no longer Yinzi, not a single individual with limited information, and he was no longer the Li Yunxin hidden in the thick fog. The other party was almost the entire Daotong, and his ability to obtain information was amazing. In this aspect he had almost no advantage. The other party still had the strength to completely crush him, and violence couldn't solve the problem completely. Therefore, for a long time to come, he probably wouldn't have the advantage of asymmetric information, unless he could get more secrets. He believed that Black Bai Yanjun, Lord Dongting, and the Freemasonry were all hiding great secrets. But he still needed time. At the moment, he wasn't strong enough to become a third party, so a choice that he wasn't very willing to face was placed in front of him: to turn to the demons or to turn to Daotong. Daotong could be considered the official of this world. But because of some experiences in his previous life, he had a natural sense of discomfort towards all authority and official. These two words might not necessarily have a negative meaning, but dislike didn't need any reason. Moreover, it was Daotong and Kenzo who made things difficult for him, and it was the demons who saved him. But he also didn't like the demons. Kun Wuzi was right. The demons were free and unfettered? He wasn't a teenager, so he wouldn't believe that kind of nonsense. A person or an organization might be misunderstood in a short period of time and bear a stigma, but it was impossible to be misunderstood for thousands of years. The demons were notorious, and Li Yunxin roughly knew what kind of people they were. But now he had become a focus, a core, and he could no longer stay out of it. Why did the Lord Dongting keep him in this restrictive spell? Li Yunxin thought for a long time. This was probably the longest time he had spent in this world. He weighed many things within his abilities, simulating and planning a few possible routes. If what Kun Wuzi said is true, what will he do after he goes to Daotong? How should he deal with it? If he ignores them and hides in Dongting on the side of demons, what will happen in the future? How should he deal with it? The biggest uncertainty came from his lineage. If he was an ordinary person, Kun Wuzi probably wouldn't express goodwill like this. At least it seemed like he was expressing goodwill. But he was also afraid that because of this bloodline he would turn to the demons, and become a target that Daotong and Kenzo must eliminate. He pondered silently for an hour, and Kun Wuzi also patiently waited for an hour. Soon after, the sky turned white. For the first time in his life, Li Yunxin finally raised his head. He looked at Kun Wuzi. I can't open this Dongting. But even if I can, I won't open it. I have done a lot of things in the past few months, not only to survive but also to get rid of fear. Daotong and Kenzo have systems and systems. I may have privileges there, but I'm still a part of it. Since I'm a part of it, I have to be restricted and follow the rules set by others. And I've always been afraid of this kind of thing. I don't want to hand over my fate and decision-making power to others. Everyone has the freedom to be free from fear. If you don't understand it, it's called natural human rights. In the current world, it's unrealistic to talk about this freedom, but it's the goal I've been working hard for. I was scared by demons before, and I was also scared by people from Daotong and Kenzo. They all made me feel threatened and scared. Therefore, Kun Wuzi has already understood what Li Yunxin wanted to say. He feels strange about the word freedom, and he will completely understand the freedom and pursuit that Li Yunxin said after a long time. But now he still can't understand and agree with it. He said in a low voice, demons also have systems and hierarchy. They are even stricter than human beings. I can talk to the 7 sons behind me peacefully. Maybe there are some demons who can do this, but there won't be many. Daotong and Kenzo may not represent light, but demons must represent darkness. If you still think that you are a human in your heart, or if you still have some humanity. But it's still different. Li Yunxin smiled. I can be a lord among demons. But in Daotong, do you know why Yunzi was killed by me? A demon in the transcendent state like the 9th young master could set up a territory by the Wei River, but Yunzi, a Taoist in the true state, tried his best to get a little power to guard the city of Wei, and even sacrificed 36 cultivators to lure me into the trap. I don't want to be in the same situation as him. Daotong and Kenzo. Li Yunxin thought for a while and suddenly laughed. The company is big, the benefits are good, and the salary is high. But I'm not a quiet person. What I want is not a high salary but space and career prospects. I want to be a demon king. Since I'm here and have so many opportunities and adventures and I'm a genius, if I don't reach the highest point in this world, I can't forgive myself. Can you understand me? Kun Wuzi may not understand the words that Li Yunxin said. But anyone who had learned to explain words would probably be able to roughly understand the meaning of each word from those words. He had a general idea. The master of Langya Cave thought for a while and said with a serious face, if I've never met you, I would think that you're bewitched by those demons. But since I've dealt with you, I know that these are your own ideas. If that's the case, Li Yunxin listened carefully. Emperor Li cultivated the body of the Ghost King, and the world was shocked. He killed 4 and injured 1, and it was a terrible thing that had never happened in 1,000 years. But just now you saw it clearly, such a big demon was also killed by me, Daotong, within 2 months. It's not just me. The Ghost King came to the Wei River, and wherever he went, the disciples of Daotong all risked their lives. This is the power of Daotong and Kenzo for thousands of years. There are many things that you think are important, but to us, it's just a gust of wind. A gust of wind is always a gust of wind, and it can't hurt the mountain. As for the so-called, Kun Wuzi shook his head. War? Maybe it is for the demons. But for Daotong and Kenzo, it's just a way to free up their hands and clean up the things that should have been cleaned up a long time ago. Li Yunxin, you're standing on the side that's destined to fail. Li Yunxin smiled. It doesn't matter. I don't intend to stand here forever. Kun Wuzi sighed. I shouldn't have asked you. I said I want you to open the inhibition and hand over Dongting. You think I'm threatening you, but here in Daotong I'm being very lenient. Since it's like this, I'll tell you now. After tomorrow, the cultivators in the Qing Kingdom will arrive at the Wei River and Dongting. Just for one thing, to confirm whether the soul of Shinryu is really in the Dongting Lake. If there is, we must get it. Then the cultivators in the world will clean up the demons, no matter how good their reputation is or how high their cultivation is. If you want to blame someone, blame Emperor Li. Although the matter of Emperor Li didn't shake the foundation, it has made Daotong and Kenzo know that at this time, the situation of the world has reached a critical point. The demons should no longer be indulged. There are only humans in this world, and that's enough. Daotong and Kenzo have the determination to sacrifice all the cultivators in the Shen realm. For us, it's just a small loss that can be made up for in a few hundred years. In the past, we've experienced more. When Kun Wuzi said these words, it didn't seem like he was threatening Li Yunxin. Instead, it seemed like he wanted to tell Li Yunxin something in advance so that he could be prepared. Li Yunxin couldn't guess why Kun Wuzi did this, and Kun Wuzi also didn't know why he did this. But he just felt that it was a pity. Everyone in the world knew about the 2 sages. But the 2 sages had lived in this world for 3,000 years. 3,000 years ago, the 2 sages were just unknown cultivators. 2,400 years ago, they reached the realm of Taishang Wangqing. And then, in the next 2,400 years, there were no more Taishang cultivators. There were even only 11 cultivators who reached the realm of Guangxing Mysterious. But even before that, although there weren't many cultivators who reached the realm of Taishang Wangqing, there would always be 4 or 5 of them every 1,000 years. Kun Wuzi wasn't happy to see such a situation. In his eyes, this Li Yunxin was actually a good seedling for cultivation. But it was a pity that such a person had entered the path of the demons, just like that person 1,000 years ago. After both sides talked about these things, Kun Wuzi didn't delay any further. He waved his sleeves and a thin layer of mist suddenly appeared between him and Li Yunxin. The mist climbed up the layer of restriction around Dongting Lake, and like a layer of mist covering a piece of glass, the outside couldn't be seen clearly. This hazy milky white mist quickly spread out for a few miles, and finally covered the entire Dongting Lake. Li Yunxin realized that this time, he was jointly isolated from the world by the demons and human cultivators. He let out a soft breath, turned around and went straight into Dongting Lake. It took him half an hour to find Red Lady. When he found her, this carp spirit was on the white beach of Mount Jun. Kun Wuzi overturned the water in Dongting, and Mount Jun wasn't spared either. One of the 8 sceneries of Dongting in the past was now beyond recognition. There used to be lush vegetation on the mountain, but now the shorter trees have been broken, not to mention the shorter shrubs and grasses. These plants rolled down from the mountain, piling up on the shore and the beach. Of course, there were also dead fish, birds and beasts. Although only one night has passed, the weather in July and August in Dongting is like a steamer basket. Their corpses are soaked in water, and gradually they start to emit an unfriendly smell. Red Lady is in the mess on the shore, looking up at the School of the Emperor Star. The School of the Emperor Star is unharmed. When Li Yunxin first saw the Lord Dongting in Mount Jun, he thought there was nothing special about this wooden palace. He thought it was a place where the big demon Lord Dongting played and ate people in his spare time. But now he knows it is not an ordinary thing. The cornice on the stone gate with the words School of the Emperor Star on the shore has not been damaged. It is still the same as when he first came here. He also comes to this mess, and the feeling of stepping on the ground makes him feel a little comfortable. My father didn't allow me to come here before. Red Lady looks at the gate and says, but now he can't control me. She then turns around and looks at Li Yunxin. What happened over there? I'm afraid those Taoists don't dare to listen. Li Yunxin frowns slightly and waves his sleeves. A gust of evil wind rises on the ground, sweeping the messy plants and corpses nearby far away into the lake. There is fog on the shore of Dongting Lake, but the sky is blue. He can still see the sun rising from the east. The debris swept away by his evil wind stirred up a wave in the distance and then calmed down. He squints at the water for a while and then turns to look at Red Lady. The war has started. Red Lady is slightly stunned and asks him with her eyes wide open, "What war?" Li Yunxin stretches out his hand and draws a circle in the air. Demons. Then he draws another circle. Dao Tong, the war has started. Dao Tong plans to kill all the demons in the world. Hearing this, Red Lady is not so interested. Oh. She turns her head and points to the white beach in front of her. I used to think that this place is less lively. I like the wooden pavilion in Egret Island, but it is destroyed. Now my father is not here and this place is sealed. We can also build a wooden pavilion here. We can use the Polonia on Mount June. We can drink and talk in the pavilion when we are free. Li, what do you think? Aren't you afraid of the war? This is a major event that concerns every demon. You are also a Yin spirit and a demon. Red Lady blinks and laughs. What's the use of being afraid? I am a woman and my magic power is not strong. I am powerful in front of little demons and monsters, but in front of a big demon like Li, I am just a pawn. Besides, I can't decide the general trend and disputes of the world. The happiest period of my life is right in front of me. Red Lady hesitates for a while and finally steps forward to the gate of the School of the Emperor's Star. At first, she takes a few steps carefully, but after finding nothing unusual, she walks faster and faster. She stops in front of the threshold and glances at the front hall hidden in the flowers and trees in the distance. Finally, she crosses the threshold. She stands quietly in the shadow of the trees behind the threshold for a while and then turns to Li Yunxin with a happy smile. Look, it's right in front of us. Li and I are trapped in this Dongting, and the human cultivators and demons outside can fight as much as they want. When the result of the battle is out, if the demons win, we can still continue to live freely. If the human cultivator wins, Li can kill me as a sign of loyalty. I will also be happy. How good would that be? Li Yunxin spread her hands speechlessly and sighed. All right. It's none of your business, but it's mine. Tell me how to get out of this inhibition first. Chapter 209. Hong Yangzi stood in the shadows and tilted her head slightly. She looked at Li Yunxin and smiled mischievously. Didn't I tell Li Lang earlier? My father refined the Jianmu into my body, and now I can sense the inhibition of Dongting. This means that I am the circle eye of this inhibition. Although I am the circle eye, I really don't know how to get out of this inhibition. My father should have a way, but he didn't tell me. She thinks for a while, reaches out to pull a small red flower from a branch beside her, inserts it into her hair bun, and turns to walk to the front hall. But my dear, you are so smart. You should know that there is another way to solve this inhibition. That is, destroy the circle eye. My father spent a lot of effort to refine the circle eye into my body. In the past, destroying the circle eye was more difficult than destroying the circle. But now if you want to go out. She tilts her head, just kill me. Red Lady, the only daughter of Lord Dongting, loves Li Yunxin strongly because of her obsession. After saying this, she turns around a cluster of flowers and disappears into the moon gate on the west side of the main hall. Li Yunxin stands on the white beach of Mount June for a while, and then realizes that he is going to face a choice again. But he is not sure that he can make a good choice. Lord Dongting did this deliberately, this old devil. Kun Wuxia tries to persuade himself to turn to Dao Tong with words and the general trend. Lord Dongting also does the same thing but more directly and crudely. Killing Red Lady can get out of Dongting. But for him, it also means destroying the humanity in his heart. Does Li Yunxin need humanity? Does he still have humanity in his heart? In fact, he often asks himself these two questions, but he doesn't expect that he will face them directly so soon. He looks up at the rising sun and feels a little annoyed for the first time. Not far away there comes the sound of waves. It is probably the evil flood dragon at the bottom of the lake. But after all, Dongting is vast, not a small pond. He looked at the flood dragon and with a gust of wind, he rushed into the sky and fled into the distance. If he needs a long time to make a choice, he has to figure out what Dongting looks like first. In this day and age, any reliable map was considered a contraband. The maps that were circulated among the people, which seemed to be child's play, were also regarded as treasures. If he wanted to know the situation of the waters that he was temporarily in charge of, he couldn't just look at those things. He had to see it for himself. The area of Dongting is hundreds of times larger than the city of Wei. Red Lady shouldn't be the only Yin deity who could speak and was rational, right? Therefore he began to patrol the waters where he might have to stay for a long time. But he didn't expect that it would take 6 whole days. At first he wanted to see the hydrology and landforms along the coast. Hence he looked at it in detail. In the past, the furthest he had gone was Nanshan Hill and no further. This time he just flew all the way over, not letting go of the scenery by the lake. The area outside the restrictive spell had been sealed by the fog, but there was still 1 zhang of land on the shore. There were either flowers and trees growing on the ground, or a shallow beach or a small pier. The first day he felt it was interesting, but he didn't find anyone. On the second day he felt it was boring. What was the most fun thing in the world? It was people. There were few people around the lake at the moment, and there were patches of shallow beach and trees by the lake. He had something on his mind and couldn't calm down, so he didn't have the mood to enjoy the nature and scenery. He was bored after looking at it for a whole day. So he sped up on the second day. The scenery whizzed past under his body, and the strong wind blew on his face. He was thinking about his own troubles while looking at the scenery. But even so, it still took him 4 days to go around the Dongting. He flew in the sky and his speed was as fast as the wind and lightning. If it were measured by the feet of the mortals, it wouldn't be strange for him to travel for half a year. But it seemed that he didn't gain anything. In fact, Guananshan had already left the territory of the Wei River Prefecture by dusk on the first day. He had passed through 6 prefectures and 2 prefectures in the last few days. The Dongting was vast and boundless, and all the prefectures should have docks by the lake. It was more convenient to transport goods by water. However, because of the magic of Kunwuzi, Li Yunxing could only see a few wreckages of the docks by the lake. He couldn't see anyone, so they must be dead. The forbidding formation by the lake was still covered with fog. The people living by the lake must be panicking, not knowing what had happened. Many fishermen and boatmen who relied on the Dongting to make a living must have lost their livelihood. On the 4th day he finally saw the vague shadow of Mount June in the distance. He circled around and came back. At this moment he realized that he had only seen a small part of the Dongting by looking at the shore. If there were any unexpected people or things in the lake, they must be in the lake. Mount June was a large island. If people moved there, it could accommodate thousands of families. However, such a Mount June was not even a sesame seed on a big cake in Dongting. It could only be the tip of a needle. There were many islands like this in Dongting. Who knows, there might be a surprise hidden there. It could also be surprise or fear. He spent another 2 days circling around Mount June, circling and circling. As a result, it was like flying on the sea. All he could see was indigo water. He couldn't even see the fog on the forbidding formation. He used the sun as a reference, but it was not very accurate. In the end he spent 2 days in vain. He only saw a reef island protruding from the water. There was no other harvest. He didn't want to continue. He finally understood how big Dongting was. 100 or 200 of these Dongting caves would fill up the entire Qing kingdom, right? He spent a whole 6 days doing this futile thing, but his furrowed brows never relaxed. He hadn't made a decision yet. However, an accident happened on the 7th day. He found another island. This island should have been uninhabited before. Because it was in the hinterland of Dongting, the surrounding water was deep. It was like a pillar protruding from the bottom of the lake and exposed on the water alone. It was not easy to build a dock around such a deep water island. There were no fish and it was far from the shore. It was doomed to be uninhabited in this era. The trees on the island were verdant. Under the sun of the 7th day, they were like a piece of finely carved green jade, which was delightful. Li Yunxing saw this scene, and his irritation in his heart disappeared for no reason. It surprised him. He had been indulging the uneasiness in his heart and was happy to experience the morbid pleasure brought by this uneasiness. But now he was refreshed. He thought maybe his subconscious thought he couldn't go on like this in the current situation. There were people waiting for him outside. The Ghost Emperor was in the city of Wei, and his demon disciples were also outside. It was said that Lu Laodao ran away with them, but he didn't know whether he was safe or not. He agreed with his subconscious's decision and decided to escape for the last day. After 7 days, he wanted to return to the life of fighting in which every nerve was tense all the time. Life was a battle. Comfort meant death. He made such a decision and landed on the island with clouds and mist. Then he saw a broken ship on the shore. It was a ship. This meant that this ship was not small when it was alive. It was the kind of gaily painted pleasure boat that could only be owned by rich families. Now it was lying on the shore with only the keel left. The hull was smashed into pieces. He walked around the ship and saw a line of footprints. So he followed the footprints into the forest. When he walked into the forest, the footprints disappeared, but something else was left. Some shells were scattered in the grass as if someone ate them while walking and threw them away. There was no beach on this island. Li Yunxin thought for a while and guessed that they were probably shellfish that were originally attached to the wreckage of the ship. He followed the shells and saw a huge stone in the forest. It was about 3 or 4 stories high and was surrounded by large trees. It was a big green stone, but it was empty at the bottom. There was a fire and there was a person beside the fire. Li Yunxin looked around and didn't find anything unusual. So he walked over and stood at the entrance of the stone cave to take a look. That fire had been burning for a while and was about to be extinguished. An old man with white hair was lying on his side on the ground. His clothes were still intact. He didn't look like a fisherman but a rich person. He must be someone from that ship. At this time the old man woke up. He propped himself up and looked at the cave entrance. He squinted his eyes as if the sunlight outside the cave was blinding his eyes. Then he rubbed his eyes and sat up straight. He stared at Li Yunxin for a while and said in a hoarse voice, "Ah, you young man, are you also in trouble here?" Li Yunxin didn't say anything. He slowly walked in and walked around the cave. It was called a cave, but it was actually a very wide stone gap. The fire and sunlight illuminated a part of it, but there were more hidden in the shadows. It was a hot sunny day outside, but it was cool inside the cave. The old man didn't find it strange when he saw him like this. He only smiled and said, "I thought only this ship was in trouble. I didn't expect there to be people. I think I must have angered the Dragon King yesterday because of the downpour." Li Yunxin walked in front of him and squinted at him. "Where are you from?" The old man grunted in acknowledgement. "Normal people shouldn't look like you in this situation," Li Yunxin said slowly. "This place is very far from the shore. You should know that fishermen are unlikely to come. You're an old man. You will die after staying here for a few days. But you look so calm and relaxed." The old man heard this and laughed. When he laughed, the wrinkles on his face piled up, but he looked very kind and amiable. His eyes squinted into a line. He only used the corner of his eyes to look at people. "You young man sigh, what's there to be afraid of dying? This old man has lived to 68 years old. People say I'm an old man. But I, this old man, was tricked into this ship by my children. They said they sent me to this lake to play, but in fact they dug a hole in the bottom of the ship. My old servant escorted me to this shore. My children went back in the small boat. Who would have thought that it would suddenly rain? I survived in this cave, but my children died in the lake. In this case, what's there to be afraid of?" Li Yunxin thought carefully. He picked up a blue stone next to the fire and sat down. He picked up a piece of dry wood from the ground and threw it into the fire. He laughed and said, "So you're not an ordinary person. Only rich or noble people would do such things. Were you a noble in the government or a hero in Jianghu?" The old man laughed. "Let's not talk about it. But I can see that you're not an ordinary person. Where are you from?" "I'm from the Tang of the East." Li Yunxin replied casually, "If we're going to stay on this island for a while, what are you going to eat?" "I saw shells when I came here. Now it seems that I've eaten all of them. What will I do in the future? Will you hunt for a living? You don't look very healthy." The old man laughed. "I don't like the fishy smell of water. I don't eat fish, shrimps, and shells. I've lived for decades. I can't lose my chastity when I'm old." The shells that the young master saw on the road were not leftovers, but were for his use. But they weren't easy to use, so I threw them away. Speaking of food, I have an old servant. As I said before, he protected me on the shore. With him, I don't have to worry about food these days." Li Yunxin looked at the old man. "You went hunting?" "I said he's an old servant." The old man stood up. His stomach growled. From his point of view, this was a rude thing to do, but he didn't care about it now. He slowly walked to a shadowy spot in the rock gap. It was cold and wet, dripping water. Maybe it would form a stalactite after thousands of years. "I'm an old servant, but I don't have a good weapon. Where can I go hunting?" The old man stopped and sighed. "I've been with him for more than 40 years. He always said that his life is mine. In the end, this life really became mine." He stretched out his hand and felt around in the shadow. Li Yunxin heard a crisp sound. He thought it was the sound of shells hitting rocks. Then he heard the sound of a sack being cut. Then the old man turned around. Li Yunxin saw that he was holding a bloody piece of meat in his hand. There was still some dark white skin attached to it. The old man looked at him for a while and became silent. He walked to the fire and put the meat on the stone. He used the sharp edge of the big shell in his other hand and slowly cut it. As he cut, he said, "Beasts, if you don't eat me, then I eat you." The human world was exactly the same. But people eat better. They don't eat your flesh but eat your essence. But it's good to look good. People eat their essence but they are still there. As long as they don't die, they can still recover. But some people, after living in this world for a long time, forget what people were like when they were still beasts. They need to eat their essence and they also need to eat human flesh. They say that this world also eats people. There's no justice in this world. But how can there be justice in this world? Being like this in the human world is already much better than beasts being like this. We have to make it better, not worse. The old man cut a piece of meat. He shakily pierced it with a twig and roasted it over the fire. After roasting for a while, he looked up at Li Yunxin. If there's a person who doesn't want to be a human but a beast, what does that person think? That you're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.